Good afternoon. I am glad to welcome you to the plenary session of the Eastern Economic Forum. This year its theme is as follows: The Far East, 2030. Let's join forces, creating opportunities. Vladimir Vladimirovich, you have said more than once that the development of the Far East is a priority. For the entire 21st century, what has already been done? What is yet to be done? How is Russia building cooperation with its colleagues in the Asia-Pacific region and regional associations today? We will look for answers and confidently find them together during the discussion. But first, Vladimir Vladimirovich, I ask you to come to the podium. Dear Mr. Anwar Ibrahim, dear Mr. Anjan, ladies and gentlemen, friends, I welcome all participants and guests of the 9th Eastern Economic Forum. Russia Vladivostok traditionally receives representatives of business, technological, and scientific teams, heads of leading companies, authorities, specialists, experts, entrepreneurs who are interested in the Russian Far East, in those truly limitless opportunities for creation and mutually beneficial partnership that opens up this unique area of our country. As you know, we have identified the development of the Far East, and our presenter Alexander has just said this, as a national priority for the entire 21st century. The importance and correctness of this decision was confirmed by life itself. The challenges that we have faced recently, and those objective trends, and this is the most important thing, that are gaining strength in the global economy. Then the main business ties, trade routes, and, in general, the entire vector of development are increasingly reoriented to the East and the Global South. Our Far Eastern regions provide direct access to these growing promising markets, allow us to overcome the barriers that some Western elites are trying to impose on the whole world. And most importantly, as I have already said, our Far East is a huge space for the manifestation of business initiative, for launching complex projects and the formation of entire new industries. In fact, today, the Far East, without any exaggeration, has become the most important factor in strengthening Russia's position in the world, our flagship in the new global economic reality. And the future of our entire country largely depends on how the Far East will develop. About 100 events, panel sessions, and round tables of the current Eastern Economic Forum are devoted to this topic, the image of the future. In general, representatives of more than 75 countries and territories take part in the events of the forum. It is very important that these discussions are accompanied by a substantive business dialogue, lead to concrete investment decisions and trade agreements. I would like to note that more than 1,000 agreements totaling over 10.5 trillion rubles were signed at the last 3 forums alone. In short, the Eastern Economic Forum has rightfully become a recognized platform for establishing strong business contacts and discussing strategic issues of development of the Russian Far East and the entire Asia-Pacific region. In the course of my speech, I will tell you about some further steps in this direction, about our proposals to foreign partners, to strengthen investment, trade, production, and technological cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. And, of course, about the results and plans in the economy, infrastructure, and social sphere of the Far East, in matters of improving the quality of life of our citizens, residents of this region. Let me remind you that a fundamentally new strategic program and management system for the integrated development of the Far East have been launched since 2013 year. This approach has proven to be effective. Over 3,500 industrial, infrastructural, technological, and educational projects have been launched and are being prepared for launch in the region for 10 years. The growth rates of investments in fixed assets in the Far East have tripled in 10 years, and they are 3 times higher than the average Russian.
увеличились. И они в 3 раза выше среднероссийских.
The results of these investments are also clear. About 1,000 new enterprises are operating. More than 140,000 jobs have been created. The dynamics of industrial production in the region has exceeded the all-Russian rates by 25% since the 2013 year. Let me remind you that 16 territories of advanced development and the free port of Vladivostok are currently operating in the Far East. Preferential treatment has been launched in the Kuril Islands. A special administrative region has been created on Russian Island, where our meeting is taking place. By the way, this area has already ensured the return of assets worth over 5.5 trillion rubles to Russia from offshore and foreign jurisdictions. To date, more than 100 companies have become its residents. We will definitely continue to move forward. We will constantly improve the business climate in Russia and in general, and in the Far East. In particular, we will apply new effective approaches to interaction with foreign investors in this region. So, at the last Eastern Economic Forum, it was announced the creation of international territories of advanced development in the Far East. They should offer globally competitive conditions for foreign investors, and first of all, of course, from friendly countries. The first international top is supposed to be created here, in Primorsky Krai. Our Chinese friends are showing great interest in it, as well as the Republic of Belarus, with the participation of which a new stupid cold port may appear in Primory. I ask the State Duma and the government of the Russian Federation to speed up work on the draft law necessary to launch international tours. An additional factor for expanding work with foreign partners should be another regulatory decision, namely, from the 1st of September of this year, our legislation provides for the possibility of using foreign design and construction standards. Of course, we are talking about the standards of those states where the requirements for the quality, reliability, and safety of capital facilities are not lower than ours. I hope that this approach will find its application, including in the international tours of the Far East. A good example of cooperation with foreign partners, large investments in construction, in job creation, should be the development of Bolshoy Ussuriysky Island in the Khabarovsk territory. We are talking about the creation of large logistics complexes here, checkpoints across the state border, and the expansion of the road network. In May of this year, during a state visit to the People's Republic of China, we agreed with our Chinese colleagues to work together on this project. It will give a good, powerful impetus to the development of Khabarovsk and the entire region. I ask the government to work out all organizational and financial issues in order to start implementing this plan from the next 2025 year. Of course, one of the key issues for launching business initiatives in the manufacturing industry, in housing construction, and updating the transport network in all spheres and industries is the supply of electricity. The volume of energy consumption in the Far East is growing. Today, it is 69 billion kilowatt-hours per year, and by the end of the decade, 96 billion are projected. At the same time, some districts, settlements, and large Far Eastern investors are already facing a shortage of electricity, are forced to wait for the commissioning of new stations, which is why construction, industrial facilities, and infrastructure are being held back. I have already instructed the government, together with our major energy companies and business circles, to prepare a long-term program for the development of energy capacities in the Far East. Provide for project financing mechanisms for it. As part of this program, it is necessary to eliminate the projected shortage of electricity in the Far East, primarily due to the commissioning of new generation facilities, for example, such as the Nizhnezaskaya AGS in the Amur region, which will not only supply electricity to the region itself and the eastern landfill of railways, but also help protect territories and settlements from floods. I also ask you to think about the construction of nuclear power plants in the Far East. Yesterday, we also talked about this with colleagues. I would like to emphasize that the electric power industry development plan should take into account both the current and future needs of businesses and citizens, long-term tasks facing our federal subjects, cities, and settlements. This fully applies to strengthening the transport and logistics capabilities of the Far East and the whole country. Here, the most significant major project is, of course, the solution of the eastern polygon of railways. Over the past 10 years, more than 2,000 and more than 5,000 kilometers of track have been built on the Trans-Siberian Railway and BAM. More than 100 bridges and tunnels have been erected and reconstructed, including over the river Rena, Berea, Serling. According to the results of the current year, the carrying capacity of the eastern polygon of railways should grow to 180 million tons. This year, we have launched the next, third stage of development of this most important transport artery. Work is underway, they are deployed. I emphasize that it is necessary not only to expand and embroider the bottlenecks of the highway, to put into operation more than 300 objects, including duplicates of the Severomuyski, Kuznetsovsky, Kedarsky tunnel, as well as the bridge over the Amur. The task is much more ambitious. So, for example, there are solid second paths to be laid all along the BAM. At the same time, it is already necessary to think about the future. I believe that we need to make BAM not only completely double-track, but also electrify this highway. In the next 8 years, 3,100 kilometers of railway track will be laid at the eastern landfill. For comparison, the same amount was laid as part of the first and second stages of the expansion of the BAM and Transsib combined, and the same amount during the years of construction of the BAM from 1990, 1974 to 1984 years. In short, today we are implementing a project that is larger in scale than the largest infrastructure investment project of the Soviet Union, implemented by all the republics of the USSR, and with great effort. Like the Trans-Siberian Railway, a new motor transport corridor from St. Petersburg to Vladivostok should become a continental artery. Moreover, it is not only about increasing the volume of cargo transportation and improving the quality of road transport. With the construction of the corridor, domestic tourism will also be developed. The entire route of the highway passes through dozens of regions of the Russian Federation. The corridor is developing in stages. Last December, a modern highway between Moscow and Kazan was opened. At the end of this year, it should reach Yekaterinburg, and then Tyumen. Bypasses of Omsk, Novosibirsk, Kemerovo, and Kansk will also be built. In the future, when the modern road reaches Vladivostok, the road corridor will number more than 10,000 kilometers, including entrances to checkpoints across the state border of Russia. In this regard, let me remind you of the task that was set in the message to the Federal Assembly, namely, to reduce queues at the border, to reduce the standard time of inspection of trucks. This should not exceed 10 minutes. Already in the 26th year, it is necessary to achieve this result at the first 5 border crossings of the Far East. By the way, good dynamics in the speed of cargo handling at the border has already been achieved at railway crossings. I would like to stress that a lot of work has been done at the Eastern Railway testing ground and at all major road facilities in Russia. It involves specialists, design engineers from many regions of our country. With their intensive work and responsible approach to business, they prove that Russia can and is ready to build quickly, a lot and qualitatively. To implement infrastructure and transport projects on a national and, in the full sense of the word, global scale. Among such projects is the development of the Northern Sea route as an international logistics route. Over the past 10 years, its cargo traffic has grown by almost an order of magnitude. If in the 2014 year, only 4 million tons of cargo were transported along the Northern Sea route, then last year, more than 36 million tons were already transported. This is 5 times more than the Soviet record. We will continue to increase cargo traffic, including through active development of Arctic deposits, redirection of cargo from west to east by increasing transit. A large-scale development plan for the Northern Sea route has been deployed. We are building icebreakers, developing a satellite constellation, strengthening coastal infrastructure, a network of emergency rescue centers in order to roll out new logistics routes. 2 years ago, coastal flights were launched along the Safe Sea route. Today, there are 14 ports in the Northwest, the Arctic, and the Far East in this scheme. I would like to note that according to the results of last year, the capacity of Russian ports within the borders of the Northern Sea route exceeded 40 million tons. Of course, we believe that this is only the beginning. We will continue to increase their capacity, modernize cargo transshipment, and expand short and long-distance railway approaches to them. In particular, this will increase the capacity of the Murmansk transport hub to 100 million tons, and in the future, of course, even higher. I would like to note that our partners in Eurasian integration are also interested in the development of the Murmansk transport hub. So, colleagues from Belarus, who are already in crime, are objectively considering the prospects for the development of port infrastructure and their terminals on the Kola Peninsula. And, of course, we invite other countries to work in this project. I know that there is interest in this work. I would like to add that all major transport and logistics initiatives in Russia are implemented with the involvement of advanced engineering, digital and eco-friendly solutions, which provides additional demand for the products of domestic machine building and metallurgical enterprises, for the services of construction and other industries, science and high-tech business. This is how, on the basis of the most modern approaches, taking into account the qualitatively increased technological, economic, educational opportunities of the whole country, it is necessary to solve the tasks of strategic development of the Far East, including the further development of such a strong basic industry of the region as subsurface use. Today, all Russian tungsten, tin, fluorspar, and rough ores are mined in the Far East. 80% of diamonds and uranium, more than 70% of silver, 60% of the country's gold. At the same time, in key mining centers, including Yakutia and Chukotka, reserves have been developed for a long time and are objectively limited, and the demand for minerals is growing, not only for export, but also in our domestic market. We must ensure the country's resource sovereignty, form a stable base for the uninterrupted supply of the national economy of our regions, cities and towns with affordable raw materials and fuel, create a basis for the production of new materials and energy sources. Moreover, as I have already said, this should be done using more efficient domestic technologies and scientific developments in the field of ecology and nature management. At our forum last year, an instruction was formulated to the government to draw up separate programs for studying the subsoil of the Far East and Siberia, to include them in the federal project Geology, the revival of the legend. These programs are ready. According to estimates, each ruble of public funds invested in geological exploration will attract at least 10 rubles of private investment. But most importantly, the invested funds certainly pay off. They will be recouped, provide a powerful return, a comprehensive effect throughout the production chain. But we need to do this work in a timely manner, understanding the investment planning horizon. I ask the government, in the draft federal budget for the next 3 years, to provide funding for these programs in the amount necessary to achieve the goals set. The Far East has the potential for a multiple increase in geological knowledge, including the search and extraction of high-tech raw materials. Titanium, lithium, not both, rare earth metals, which are required in the economy of the future. And the main thing is that we have all this. The potential of these industries for the growth of the Far Eastern regions, creating jobs, increasing the availability of various services, strengthening communications and logistics is huge. We will support the development of advanced, creative industries, infrastructure, the big data economy, artificial intelligence in the Far East, including organizing a zone for processing unmanned aerial vehicles for civilian purposes. In order to use the full benefits of technological progress, we will continue to increase the scientific and educational potential of the Far East. The implementation of new projects of university campuses in Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk and Khabarovsk has already begun in the region. But this is obviously not enough for the Far East. I propose to launch work on several more projects, namely to build new campuses in Ulanud, Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, Chita. We are also implementing the construction of the second stage of the Far Eastern Federal University campus here in Vladivostok. In such centers, all conditions will be created for studying, working, living of students, platforms for youth entrepreneurship, and business clubs will be opened. We will also develop universities in the Arctic. In addition to the already launched campus project in Arkhangelsk, the same project will be added in Murmansk. Advanced engineering schools will also operate on the basis of the campuses. Two such schools, on Sakhalin and in Vladivostok, have already been established. Their task is not only to train specialists for industry and agriculture, transport and services, for the use of artificial intelligence, but also to offer original solutions for serial implementation in the management system, in the social sphere, in economic sectors. The Russia Scientific and Technical Center has been successfully operating on Russian island for 2 years. He specializes in innovative developments in the field of global energy. They are already actively used in the program of technical re-equipment of the energy complex of the Far East, also with the participation of our leading companies. Another large innovative scientific and technological center will be created on Russian island, on the basis of the Far Eastern Federal University. His profile will be research and practical solutions in the field of marine engineering, biotechnology, biomedicine, and other promising areas. I ask my colleagues from the government and Primorsky Krai to use the tools of the Far Eastern concession to implement the project, as well as to think over mechanisms for attracting scientists from other scientific centers of Russia to this center, and from other countries too, bearing in mind competitive motivational programs, and a social package for specialists and their family members. Dear colleagues, we understand that success in implementing our plans here in the Far East, and throughout the country, throughout Russia, depends primarily on people, on Russian families. I have said more than once that it is impossible to be guided by the old logic, when first factories, and only then. We think about those who work at these enterprises. This logic is not only unfair, it simply does not work in the modern economy, in the economy of the future, which is being built, literally built around a person. That is why, together with the new economic plans in the Far East, we have launched major social initiatives and launched a single subsidy mechanism. With its help, schools and kindergartens, polyclinics and hospitals, sports complexes are being built and reconstructed. The urban environment is being improved, infrastructure is being updated. To date, almost 2,000 social and infrastructure facilities have already been built. The single subsidy has become a powerful financial lever for the mechanism of the Far Eastern concession. Its task is to attract private investment in social projects. The business has already planned to invest more than 120 billion rubles for these purposes. 36 such initiatives are being implemented. The work is already underway. For example, a year-round ski resort is being built here in Primorye, and a National Museum Theater is being built in Ulanud. A new community center will be opened in Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, and an art museum will be opened in Khabarovsk. Sports complexes and a new sports complex are being built in Magadan and Chita. In the same place, in Chita and Birobidzhan, urban lighting is being completely modernized. Of course, we will continue to support the work of the Far Eastern Concession, adjust it to the needs of citizens and business opportunities. What I want to emphasize separately: today, schools, airports, bridges, highways are being built throughout the country as part of a public-private partnership, and urban transport is being updated. However, the volume of such projects is still relatively small, less than 3% of GDP, or 4.4 trillion rubles. In order to develop this sphere more intensively, it is necessary to improve the relevant legislation, as well as the mechanism of the state's work on private partnerships, to ensure that risks for all parties, both authorities and business, are transparent and distributed fairly, including when implementing socially important projects. Taking into account the existing experience and accumulated practice on technological sovereignty projects, I propose that the Web Development Corporation act as one of the mandatory participants in public-private partnership projects, so that the corporation controls the risk distribution system, supports the benefits of the project for both the state and business. But Igor Ivanovich and I have talked about this, and corporations are ready for this. And at the same time, as in the case of project financing, it would stimulate the attraction of private investment. I ask the government, together with WEB, to determine the specific parameters and scope of transactions within the framework of public-private partnership, which will have to be carried out, as I have already said, with the mandatory participation of WEB. Next, it is very important that private investments are attracted, taking into account long-term plans for the development of industries and territories, as well as our settlements, cities, towns. For their comprehensive development, it is for integrated development that we are actively promoting a fundamentally new tool for improving the quality of people's lives. This is the so-called master plan. Many people know about this, at least our Russian colleagues. They have already been approved for 22 administrative centers and urban agglomerations of the Far East, where more than 4 million people live. In particular, such a document has been prepared for the satellite city of Vladivostok. This master plan will unite the whole agglomeration, Vladivostok, Artyom, and the Nadezhdinsky district in one development logic. Its development should begin as early as the next 2025 year. What is the specifics, meaning, and new approach in these master plans? To do this, you need to look at what happened before at the local level. Economic and urban planning services had little interaction. The economy and business often developed on their own. Construction, housing, and communal services, social infrastructure separately, by itself. The result was unbalanced solutions and unbalanced urban spaces. Now the region and local administrations have held a series of discussions with residents and businesses, identified problem points, identified potential in all areas of development of their settlements, and developed an individual long-term model for each city. In fact, for the first time, the concepts of socioeconomic and spatial development were combined within the framework of one document, both socioeconomic and spatial, with the commissioning of transport, housing and communal, energy and other infrastructure. And, I repeat, the integrated task here is to improve the quality of people's lives. That's the goal. Most of the events of the Far Eastern master plans are being designed, but already now, we can say, 70 objects will be commissioned before the end of this year. And in the future, the pace of implementation of master plans should increase. To note the subjects of the Federation and the departments that are most actively advancing in this work. The Ministry for the Development of the Far East has compiled a special rating. The leaders in the implementation of master plans are now the Sakhalin and Magadan regions, the Republic of Buryatia, as well as the Kamchatka and Khabarovsk territories. I thank my colleagues for the pace they have gained, and I ask them to increase it in the future. At the same time, I note that every year we will monitor the dynamics of the Far Eastern master plans. Celebrate the best regional teams and federal departments, so that the remaining colleagues take an example from them. Adopt best practices. I would like to add that we have decided on additional amounts of budget loans for the implementation of master plans approved by the government. 30 billion rubles have already been allocated for these purposes. I emphasize, additionally, I propose that from the approved limit of such loans for the period from the 25th to the 30th year, we purposefully allocate 100 billion rubles for the implementation of master plan projects of our Far Eastern and Arctic cities, that is, in excess of the limits that the regions can receive according to the standard distribution. The implementation of urban development plans should not be forgotten when forming new national projects, work on which is now in the final stage. Moreover, it is necessary to allocate funds for the development of Far Eastern cities in separate sections. First of all, within the framework of such national projects as infrastructure for life, efficient transport systems, family, long and active life, as well as youth and children. What else is important here? Half of the expenses of the master plans of Far Eastern cities fall on extra-budgetary sources, that is, on the investment of business of city-forming enterprises that are ready to build polyclinics, kindergartens, sports centers, pave roads, update utility networks, restore cultural panic, and so on. As I have already said, we will definitely support such business investments. I am sure that with the increase in the pace of transformation in cities, their share will certainly grow, including from strategic partners, large enterprises that, as part of their social programs, actively participate in the renewal of cities where they develop their business. Their results, capacities, and experience should also be used to implement master plans. In this way, strategic partners can fully finance the creation of a social infrastructure facility in a city, village, territory where their investment projects are implemented. And after the transfer of such a social facility to a municipality or region, receive compensation from taxes, benefits, and other preferences. I ask the government to determine the parameters of such a mechanism. I emphasize that the experience of the Far East will become the basis for scaling up the practice of master plans. As it was noted in the message to the Federal Assembly, such strategic documents will be prepared for 200 settlements of Russia by the 2030th year. In other words, we will scale 22 localities in the Far East today, 200 throughout the country, including support cities, that contribute to strengthening Russia's technological sovereignty. Next, a comfortable urban environment and large-scale social infrastructure are an integral part of modern and integrated residential development. Far Eastern investors implementing such projects are entitled to the benefits of the territory of advanced development. Within the framework of the Far Eastern Quarter Instrument, it is currently being run in 7 regions. With its help, it is planned to build 1,800,000 square meters of housing, where almost 70,000 people will live. In general, I note that over the past 5 years, the volume of housing built annually in the Far East has approximately doubled. This is a good indicator. According to the results of the current year, it is expected from 5,600,000 square meters. Important. It can be said that the Far Eastern mortgage played a decisive role here. As you know, we have extended it to the participants of a special military operation. Also, a loan at a record low 2% per annum can be used by young families, in which parents have not reached the age of 36 years. And, in addition, recipients of the Far Eastern Hectare, employees of enterprises of the military-industrial complex, teachers and doctors. The same mortgage is issued on the same terms and conditions in the Arctic regions. We have already extended these programs until the end of the 2030 year. I know that there have been discussions in the government regarding the terms of such a mortgage in the future. I propose to put an end here. Keep the rate on the Far Eastern and Arctic mortgages unchanged, namely at 2% per annum. I will add that since last year in Primorsky Krai, families in which the third child is born have the right to receive payment for repayment of a mortgage loan in an increased amount, not 450,000 rubles, as throughout the country, but 1 million rubles. We have agreed that a payment of a similar amount, IDS 1 million rubles, should be introduced for large families. In all Far Eastern regions where the birth rate is below the average for the federal district. I ask my colleagues to speed up the adoption of regulations so that this measure will work from the 1st of July of this year. That is, in fact, retroactively. Separately, I want to focus on very important issues for families, for our citizens who live, as they say, far from the mainland, in hard-to-reach small towns and villages of the Far East and the Arctic. Our task is to ensure regular, uninterrupted supply of these settlements, reduce the time and cost of cargo delivery. Last year, the law on northern importation was adopted. Now it is planned centrally, at the federal level. Its use is coordinated locally in the regions. Transportation and maintenance of life support goods have received priority in transport. Budget credits may be allocated for the purchase and delivery of northern delivery. The supporting transport and logistics network of the northern delivery, including highways, railway stations, sea and river ports and airports, will also be developed. The unified marine operator of the northern plant will start operating next year. While in pilot mode, it will transport cargo in Chukotka. In the future, we will expand the geography of his work to Yakutia, the Kamchatka territory, the Arkhangelsk region, and the Krasnoyarsk territory. A separate topic is related to the medical care of citizens who live in hard-to-reach regions, cities and towns. There are settlements in the Far East that can only be reached by rail. At the same time, there are not enough specialists to conduct medical examinations, professional examinations, and medical care. Since September of this year, a mobile consultative diagnostic center will start operating in 5 Far Eastern regions of the Federation, and from next year in 8 regions. In fact, this train is a real modern polyclinic and pharmacy on wheels with modern equipment and specialist doctors. They will be able to conduct a wide range of research, consult with colleagues from the leading scientific centers of Russia, use artificial intelligence technologies to form a medical opinion, and, of course, provide professional assistance, access to which is necessary for all citizens of the country, regardless of their place of residence. In this regard, I would like to thank the Russian Railways Company, all the doctors, nurses, railway workers, and other specialists who participate in this noble and so necessary project for people. I ask the government to help the company ensure the uninterrupted operation of this modern medical center and pharmacy on the basis of the train. And one more thing, to strengthen the connection between the cities and towns of the Far East, we will continue to develop local aviation communications. As I have already said, by the 30th year, the number of passengers on domestic flights in the region should increase to 4 million a year. The government has already instructed to approve an appropriate plan of concrete steps and measures. His preparation, of course, was delayed. I ask you to make all necessary decisions promptly. Of course, an important issue is the fleet. We need to build our own planes, reliable, high quality, and in the volumes we need. In this regard, I ask you to accelerate the development of a passenger version of the Baikal Light multipurpose aircraft. It is necessary to launch its serial production in the near future. At the same time, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the cost and technical characteristics of the aircraft must be competitive so that the price of flights on them is affordable for citizens. And if the situation looks somehow different, it is necessary to subsidize, then it is necessary. Dear friends, in recent years, the Far East has become more attractive for young people, for guys who want to acquire an interesting profession, as well as for trained specialists who want to prove themselves, their skills, try their hand at their chosen business. For 8 years in a row, there has been an influx of young people aged 20 to 24 in the Far East, including our targeted support measures. Thus, within the framework of the Zemsky Teacher, Zemsky Doctor and Zemsky Paramedic programs, one-time payments for teachers and doctors who move to work in villages and settlements of the Far East were doubled to 2 million rubles. For mid-level medical workers, up to 1 million. We have already agreed to extend these programs until the 2030th year and at the same time maintain the increased double Far Eastern payout ratio. Another decision concerns the Zemsky Kultury Worker Program. It is designed to support the employees of rural clubs, art houses, libraries, music schools, museums, that is, those people who, in fact, preserve our cultural sovereignty, identity, our traditional values, educate young people. I ask the government to start implementing this program from the 1st of January next year. And, of course, for cultural workers who go to small settlements in the Far East, it is necessary to provide for increased Far Eastern coefficients of one-time payments, as well as provide for them the opportunity to participate in the Far Eastern Mortgage Program. I will add that we will definitely continue to create new museums in the Far East. And as part of this work, I instruct you to perpetuate the memory of the Kuril landing operation of August-September 1945 year, which became one of the last battles of the Second World War. It became, of course, a symbol of the courage of our soldiers and officers who crushed the seemingly impregnable enemy fortifications. Dear colleagues, the entire history of the Russian Far East, this simply huge region, that occupies almost 40% of the country's territory, is written by purposeful, brave, strong-minded people. They studied and protected these lands, preserved the traditions of indigenous peoples, discovered new points on the map of Russia, built cities, factories, laid roads, developed deposits. Our ancestors, who raised the Far East, were devoted to their work and to our fatherland, and love for the motherland. Help them set truly significant, big goals. Their heroism, self-sacrifice, and achievements still inspire many of our citizens, many specialists, doctors and teachers, cultural workers, whom I just spoke about, university professors, businessmen, everyone who already works in the Far East, or is just planning to connect their lives with it, including managers of regional and municipal teams. Since 2022 year, the Moravievo-Mursky program has been operating in the region for training personnel for public service. Its effect has also been extended to the Arctic. The program is in demand. The competition is high, up to 80 people per place. Young, ambitious people see that the development of the Far East and the Arctic is one of the most interesting and most promising tasks facing our country. And we will definitely extend the Moravievo-Mursky program until at least 2030th year. I repeat, together we, the authorities at all levels, the business community, public organizations, and citizens, will have to take an active part in the implementation of new national projects and programs, so that they receive a broad Far Eastern dimension. Help make a step forward in the development of this strategically important region of Russia. in improving the quality of life of people. And of course, we will expand the ties of the Russian Far East and our entire country with foreign partners, friends, with states and companies that are interested in reliable, long-term, mutually beneficial cooperation. And thereby we will continue to strengthen Russia's position in the world. I am sure that together we will definitely achieve success. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Now I will give the floor to our esteemed guests a little later. Before, I have a couple of clarifying questions. If you look at Росстат data for the 23rd year, the number of the Far East as a whole is a little more than 7.8 million people. At the same time, over the same period, we are already seeing migration growth and a plus in 3 regions, Kamchatka, Yakutia, and Chukotka. But you have already noted that over the past 8 years, there has also been an increase in the number of young people who come here. But in general, it is difficult to call the situation stable. In the 21st year, as you mentioned the day before, there was a migration influx. In the 23rd year, there was a small but outflow. In your speech, you noted that one of the measures that will encourage people to stay in the Far East is, of course, the master plans that we are talking about now. That's how you think, in order to improve life in the Far East. What else needs to be done? You know you can. To leave for a long time, I understand that. To go into this topic for a long time. We definitely need to do more than we have done so far, absolutely obvious things. But at a minimum, you need to focus your attention on 2 main aspects. First, we need to improve conditions today and create interesting, promising jobs. And secondly, we need to make life in the region comfortable. And the most important thing is that a particular person, a family, has an understanding that this is for a long time, that the planning horizon is large, that life and work here create prospects for both a particular person and his children. Perspective is very important. In general, the inflows of interested people are primarily young people, people who have the future, who set ambitious goals for themselves. We need to create conditions for the implementation of these ambitious goals. That's the most important thing. And one more clarifying question. You have already noted that the experience of the Far East in the implementation of master plans, it will be transferred to other regions. And how? I have already said that the novelty, if it can be called novelty at all, but nevertheless, lies in the fact that we must combine both spatial development and economic development. After all, both in the Far East and in Siberia and in our country back in Soviet times, how was the work built? They built enterprises and next to the barracks. And all short-lived, as they say. City-forming enterprise. This is still the name of the city-forming enterprise. The enterprise is being built, and something was sculpted nearby, where people could survive. And BAM was also getting used to it. And many enterprises and regions have developed in this way. Businesses, and nearby something where people could live. And only later, when people began to live in such conditions, they thought, but what should be done additionally to make this life human? The difference in today's approach, which we propose, is that you need to do both in parallel. That's how we start some object behind. We immediately need to think about how and where people will live, what they will do, what should be done in the field of education, culture, medical care, and immediately implement these projects. In some cases, I won't even name them now. I wanted to name it, I will refrain, because for sure not everything has already been done as I want, so now I will say something. But what you have there is unfinished, and there is unfinished. That's right. Something may be unfinished, but the principle is to go at once in parallel in creating infrastructure for life, and the development of production and the economy in the broad sense of the word. Now, as promised, I give the floor to our esteemed. I'm sorry, I have already said that we are trying to develop 22 localities according to this principle, but in general, in the coming years, we must organize work on 200 localities throughout the country. Thank you. And now I give the floor to the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Mr. Ibrahim. Please go to the podium, and we are waiting for your opening speech. Development.
President Vladimir Putin,
Dear Mr. President,
Vice President of China, Hanzo,
dear Vice President of China,
Excellencies,
Dear
ladies and gentlemen, dear guests,
first and foremost, I would like
first
to
of all,
express my gratitude
I would like to express my gratitude to President Vladimir Putin, an invitation to participate in this most important and truly landmark forum here in Vladivostok. For the ministers, this forum is special and personal because you want to lead. No, but this is my very first visit to Russia,
years ago when I was
more than 50 years ago.
still an active youth.
More than 50 years ago, when I was still an active young leader, I flew aboard the fleet, and so in Moscow we had a transit on the way to Belgium for the annual youth conference.
Allowed to disembark.
Then, unfortunately, we were not allowed to leave the airport. We arrived at transit hotels, and so I didn't have the opportunity.
Pleasure here to be
Therefore, I have turned out to be limited.
where history blends seamlessly with progress and where the vastness of Russia meets the boundless promise of
With boundless prospects for the Asia-Pacific region.
the crossroads of commerce. This city has been
At the intersection of rich and Eastern,
reflecting a rich heritage of Russian and East Asian traditions, making Vladivostok a
what it does, a real ensemble of cultures.
beyond its economic significance.
In addition to economic importance,
Holds a
it is important to take up space.
as a vital seaport and
How important and
of the legendary Trans-Siberian Railway,
the legendary personifies.
Russia's connection with the East. Here we find a powerful symbol of our gathering,
A symbol of our geography and our vision of the future.
aspirations and futures. Since its inception in 2014,
From the moment of its foundation, the Eastern Forum,
consistently drawn visionaries and leaders from around the world.
from all over the world, this, because in which it is dynamic,
Far East is a region of vibrant economic dynamism and immense potential.
huge potential.
It contributes about
Indeed, the share of the region includes the fifth part of the world. So I would like to thank you.
and leadership.
Strategic in the creation of the forum, continues a meaningful dialogue and cooperation.
And collaboration.
Ladies and gentlemen, Russia is not only that
That commands attention.
which attracted attention.
Cultural,
In fact, it is also scientific.
Russia's prominence on the global stage transcends the confines of commerce and
Some in relation to geopolitics,
deep into the very fabric of
human history and thought.
Russia's preeminence stems not from military might or
Not
economic leverage, crucial as that may
important
but from the enduring power of ideas
in the coming power of artistic expression,
and an unwavering pursuit of knowledge.
the desire for knowledge. Achievements lie.
Remarkable soft power
The so-called soft power, thanks to which a unique place, causing respect, admiration,
influencing the hearts and minds of people around the world.
all over the world. For me personally, it is especially noticeable.
powerfully felt in literature.
In literature.
With earnest conviction,
I say this quite sincerely.
deeply from the wellsprings of English
And a glass, and an English one.
early education, and then later, having
References. At an early age.
Shakespeare,
I discovered Dante, Shakespeare. I really am life.
poorer,
Was much. Without literature. Especially without Russian and Russian literature.
in this regard,
In this regard, do.
the great Russian authors and poets who have
Weapons?
explored the profound complexities of life.
An unsurpassed soothsayer.
Deep ones?
Have had a lasting impact
Works.
understanding of society and human.
On my understanding of society and human existence.
Works of Fyodor Dostoevsky,
Fyodor Dostoevsky and Leo Tolstoy. Not to mention many and
and philosophical dilemmas that define
philosophy.
what it means to be human.
What does it mean to be human?
While Dostoevsky challenges us
Dostoevsky.
Calls.
of faith,
For the subtleties of faith and humanity.
Tolstoy invites us to reflect
Invites in the nature of power over time.
in the passage of time, transcending the literary significance
Not limited.
of Russian literature. Many
Russian literature. We demonstrate. This great one.
and its
Great.
capacity to inform our understanding of our own ideas, roles,
The role and our meaning.
of history.
Wider torments.
The appeal and power of Russian literature
In addition, the power of literature goes far beyond philosophical reasoning,
Pushkin,
such as Chekhov, Pushkin, Anna Akhmatova,
Anna Akhmatova,
the writer, and Anna Akhmatova,
life, the joys, sorrows, and struggles
which embodies
the existence with a realism that has resonated with me deeply.
every person with the unbelievers. It finds
Not.
In advancing human knowledge through science and technology,
promoting the development of humanity through technology, that Russia is constantly expanding the boundaries in development.
in space exploration, to groundbreaking work in nuclear physics and
Works.
cybernetics.
Physics.
Yourself,
And we just did. They came out.
plan
The vision and concrete plans presented by the President.
which covers a comprehensive area
Of course, they cover aspects,
as much as it is human.
development and equally appearance, and reflects and
Commitment to understanding and mastering the natural world,
mastering the world in the collective.
in the collective progress of humanity. We are witnessing a
Humanity,
trend
we are watching extremely disturbing trends of protectionism.
fragment the global economy.
Global,
Of tariffs
we see an increase in tariffs, trade barriers, and technology exchange
constitute troubling development.
causes. And in this,
South does not
rise.
find merely a shift of economic power
It is not easy. A change in the economic,
of global influence.
a certain one.
Passing countries across Asia
Absolutely. This is the country of Africa. Africa, Latin American countries,
trajectory to play a pivotal role in reshaping the future of the world economy.
the world's leading economy.
Estimates the global south now accounts for roughly 40% of the
Global is about 40 economic
is home to about 85%
production, and they are home to about 85% of the world's population. According to forecasts, by the 2030th year, 3 of the economies will belong to the countries of the global.
is a reality
This growth is creating problems and challenges.
and opportunity. For Malaysia, it is essential that we build strong ties to share the growth in the growth
They could have contributed to the creation in this.
global order. Like Russia, we see the potential of these developing economies.
Potentials are developing, and we strive to develop relationships that are able to provide mutual.
In this vein, Malaysia is actively pursuing opportunities within the global south.
Global capabilities.
That seek to create
We join other countries.
development,
They want to create
inclusive,
more inclusive, more equitable, more sustainable, and vitality
increasing complexity.
in a world that is becoming more and more.
To adapt
It depends on the ability to adapt, implement, and build relationships that go beyond borders.
global south is rising, and Malaysia intends
And I intend to climb together.
an open economy.
Malaysia.
Prides itself on doing business,
And we are proud of that.
and we have benefited greatly from being a vital node.
Society is firm-togalized.
Central to this effort is the Madani economic framework, which has implemented structural reform initiatives to trailblaze a more sustainable, inclusive future path for our nation.
More sustainable for us.
Russia bilateral relations,
In bilateral relations,
collaboration include Islamic finance, where Malaysia is regarded as a global leader
it is in this recognized world,
of institutions,
having a reliable system,
principles, but
not only Sharia, but also the movement of finance.
Russia, with its sizable Muslim population, stands at the
Muslim,
threshold of enormous potential in Islamic finance, and I believe
financing of implementation,
Russia can facilitate joint projects and attract significant investments from Muslim-majority nations.
significant investments in the economy.
Russia has made remarkable strides, becoming a significant global player in this sector.
The most important world,
Largest grain producers and exporters,
the largest in providing global
in ensuring global food security. Russia's agricultural export has been instrumental in
production role
global markets,
in the world,
ongoing supply chain disruptions.
and above all, these difficulties.
Russia's long-standing reputation for
Education, science,
in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
technologies, engineering,
Russian universities have consistently ranked among the best globally, producing world-class scientists, engineers, and researchers.
engineers, and researchers.
Of the Russian-Malaysian High-Tech Center
The Malaysian Center in Malaysia highlights are
to fostering technological innovation and academic excellence.
promotion of academic cooperation,
Facilitating cooperation in developing high-tech solutions,
cooperation in particular,
efficiency, data,
in the field of technology.
smart city technologies. We can harness our collective
We can use ours
drive innovation and address the challenges of the 21st century.
and solving the problems and challenges of the century,
For cutting-edge
in addition to the advanced achievement,
AI and semiconductor technology
artificial intelligence.
by humanistic and
They should be in principle,
to ensure
in the communist
rivalry
prices. It should not be allowed in the sphere led to further
in a more fragmented geopolitical landscape.
free trade and more further.
As upcoming ASEAN chair
Ladies and the chairman,
on strengthening existing,
focus is not just the mechanism of mechanisms,
also find synergies
conditionally to the search for effects,
partners to foster development
assistance partner,
in forging ahead with this
and of such paramount importance.
will be the need to reinforce the paramount principles of
The principle,
centrality, which constitutes the linchpin for consensus building that in turn
the principle of achievement,
member states in
What?
business action.
obliges the member state to act
Intensify engagement with other sub-regions and leveraging ties with our
with others and use our partnerships with Russia.
In light of this, in applying to join BRICS, Malaysia aims to diversify our economic diplomacy efforts.
We strive to certify efforts in the field and strengthen cooperation with the country.
Express my profound thanks and gratitude
Here is this opportunity to express sincere gratitude. The President,
for me
the decision to adopt the present in October of this year,
in October. We are entering an era marked by intense superpower rivalry,
characterizing the powers,
as well as trade and technology as tools to consolidate power bases.
that the agency is being used as tools to consolidate efforts to counter the threat of change.
Together, we should continue to cooperate.
Together we must continue.
Unified voice.
We should speak, exchange ideas in the field of strategy of the best.
Policy practices to build a future of even greater peace and prosperity.
There will be even more percentages in Asia and around the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we chart the path forward together, let us remember that the true strength of our partnership
True power only
in the agreement we sign or the
in those,
we jointly undertake
or we realize in a joint form and respect, which is ours.
Большое спасибо.
Thank you.
A big one. Thank you.
Mr. Deere. First of all, congratulations on getting to us at last. I really want to talk about the mysterious Russian soul and philosophy that you touched upon in your speech, but it will have to be urgent. About BRICS. You mentioned him too. Malaysia wants to join the unification. What exactly? Tell us a little more. Is there a benefit for you?
When we are part of the
We are part of a global world,
Continuing our trade
and we believe that we need to continue developing trade relations with all countries and strengthen trade relations.
and Europe.
Apart from the United States, apart from Europe.
We pay attention to strengthening ties with China,
Remains one of our major key partners.
and China is one of our key trading partners. Russia traditionally occupies the place of our trading partner, with whom we have very well-developed diplomatic relations. But, as I noted in a conversation with President Putin yesterday, there are enormous opportunities for the development of trade relations with Russia. Joining K. It will allow us to strengthen these relations. In particular, in the area of trade, we can share a lot, and we can strengthen the global South.
An opportunity to leverage
This will allow you to develop
fair practices.
Trade relations of trades, trade practices that are mutually beneficial for all participants in trade relations, without monopolizing these relations to certain regions.
South
We strive for this. We strive to develop the global South and strengthen trade relations around the world. Thank you.
Vladimir Vladimirovich, speaking about the BRICS summit, which will be held in Kazan at the end of October. What do you expect from it, that it will be held like this? And I will also clarify, according to the results of the 23rd year, Russia's trade turnover with BRICS partners is $294 billion. Speaking of trade, how do you see the further development of this issue? How do you assess the pace of settlements in national currencies that we have now? And is the agreement already a trend or a momentary story, in your opinion? First of all, I want to say that we do not pursue a policy of de-dollarization. After all, we did not refuse to settle in dollars. We were refused settlements. And we just have to look for other opportunities. That's it? But that's not the main thing. The main thing is something else. The main thing is that the currency of a country reflects the economic power of a power. And the more it is, this economy, the more partners it has, this economy, the more the national currency of one or another country is in demand in calculations. Well, it's natural, you know, when there are a lot of partners about a particular economy. that there is a need to use the currency of this country. Therefore, it depends, the use of a country's currency depends on the role of that country's economy in the world economy. After the Second World War, the United States, of course, took advantage of it, successfully used the results of the Second World War in the economy, conducted a Marshall Plan for Europe, created one Bretton Woods system, then repaired it a little, another. We have created such a single world currency, the dollar. It depended and still depends, as I repeat, on the volume of the power of the country's economy. Now the situation, and Mr. Prime Minister has just mentioned it, is changing in the global economy. They change. Already today, the countries of the Global South account for more than 50% of global world GDP. And the BRICS country is about 1/3 of the global economy in the world. And naturally, I want to emphasize this, priorities in the use of certain currencies also change naturally. For example, we use it with our BRICS partners. The national currency is already about 65%. This is a natural process, but the financial and political authorities of the United States, they are pushing this process with their not just sloppy, but unprofessional and stupid actions. I think they already understand that they made a mistake, but they just can't get out of this rut anymore. It seems to be very convenient for them to admit that they made a mistake. So and it would be necessary to adjust something already, they see that the tools they use do not work. We are switching to national currencies, and that's it. But they can't anymore. Apparently, this can only be done by those people who will replace today's generation of politicians. Change something, admit your mistakes. Apparently, it's difficult. And what is the reason for this behavior? Apparently, they were counting on the fact that everything would collapse, so they refused dollar service. But the trends are not obvious. They only push, as I have already said, these processes, but the trends in the use of currency, related to the volume and growth of the economy. Today, the Chinese economy, as we know well, is the first in the world in terms of purchasing power parity. The American economy is powerful, good, and its structure compares favorably with others. But the volume of the economy of the People's Republic of China is larger. The United States is in second place, but the gap between the two economies is constantly increasing from year to year. Related to this is the use of, say, the yuan in international settlements. The USA is in second place, India is in third. Russia already ranks fourth in the world in terms of political purchasing power. We have overtaken the leading economy of Europe, Germany, but more recently, these are international calculations, not ours. We have overtaken Japan. Yes, I repeat again, even Japan, Germany, the USA, they have many advantages, primarily related to the structure, the high-tech sector, and so on. But the size of the economy also matters, because it makes it possible to invest resources in the most promising industries and directions. Therefore, I repeat once again, this is a natural process. It is not even connected with the political conjuncture. But the authorities of Europe and the United States simply push this process away with their careless, unprofessional actions. As for our relations with BRICS, they are developing very successfully. Russia, China, and India are, as they say, the founding fathers of this organization. In the 2005 year, we began this process by forming the BRIC, Russia, India, China. Then Brazil joined, then South Africa. Now we have expanded the circle of participants, and this is a very good process. More than 30 countries today, 30 countries of the world, are showing their willingness to cooperate on some of them and join the BRICS. The new countries are self-sufficient. The new BRICS members are self-sufficient, with rapidly developing economies, with their own distinctive culture, very interesting states, and they will certainly make a positive contribution to the development of the organization. And now I will turn to another BRICS participant, the Vice President of the People's Republic of China. Mr. Zhen, you have the floor. I ask you to the podium. Dear Mr. President, dear Prime Minister, dear participants and gentlemen friends, hello. I am very glad to take part in the 9th Eastern Economic Forum together with you. First of all, allow it to have Chairman Xi Jinping and the Chinese government. With the beginning of the forum, in the right of Vladivostok, far to Vladivostok with partners. President Putin in the 2015 year. It took the first Eastern Forum, which today, thanks to its consistent development, tired, an important platform for achieving consensus building and seeking development. The main topic is the Far East 2030. Let's join forces, creating opportunities. It corresponds to the scientific situation and the needs of the countries of the region. Our immediate goal is the development of cooperation, mutual trust, and universal gain. Under the strategic leadership of President Xi Jinping, President Putin, sustainable development of Sino-Russian relations and strategic cooperation. The heads of our states met in Beijing and Astana, and orienting development. Cooperation between China and Russia in the end of the 65th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations point. In the face of a volatile and external environment, joining forces, resolutely following. We are diligently solving our tasks. A really tangible benefit. Contribute to the recovery and growth of the world economy. Russia is characterized by very geographical proximity, close, mods, regions with complementary assets, energy investments, interconnectedness, being natural partners, retains the position of the largest source of foreign investment for the Far East. The Far East for the 23rd year amounted to 33.8 United States, an increase of 54%. Currently, the world's leading edge, which is consonant. This is the development of the Far East. The leaders of our countries attach great importance to cooperation between the Northeast and the Far East and pay personal attention to it. In this regard, it should be noted, and passed the Sino-Russian in Mebane. The chairman sent a letter In it, which served as a strategic guide for the development of these regions and the expansion of their cooperation, in a very timely manner. We're ready, with important arrangements at the accelerated level. Interconnectedness of border infrastructure, and in terms of harmonization of rules, and to increase the breadth and quality of the foundation of Sino-Russian relations in the new era contribute to the kitchen. To ensure prosperity and stability in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, pension unprecedented colossal changes in the international, and the development and the winning remain. Unstoppable. Community is one of the destiny of a person. Global development and security of civilization represent. Global governance bring and give to collective efforts to confront. And cooperation, prosperity and development of everything. I would like to suggest must be adhered to principle, which are the leitmotif. Cooperation in the spirit of openness implements a strategy of mutual benefit, universal gain. Ponte on the construction of the world economy opposes. Attempts to clear and break the chains. Against. And as much as possible. Strengthen cohesion with the countries of the region on the basis of the principles of openness and mutual respect to achieve joint mutual cooperation. This, important. Advantages and high. The complement of the northeastern ones. Wide cooperation is conditioned. Work on finding new interests. To identify, in fact, mainly. To protect the stable and strengthen artificial intelligence, the economy. This is the promotion of the joint development of the country. Comprehensively ensure development and security. A prerequisite for development, a guarantee of security. All over the world, globally. Development to speak out decisively. And more often the attention of the force in all its manifestations. Mentality. Internal affairs of other states. Double standards persist in the Northeast is not easy. We're ready, together with everyone, to intensify mutual understanding of the protection of adequate regional security. The deepening of reforms is being pursued according to Padam. Try the benefits of everything. At a high level to expand. Based on your own. Unite 4. Promoting the modernization of the whole world. Cooperation.
为地区和世界现代化进程做出应有的贡献。
Our region.
最后，祝愿本届论坛取得圆满成功。谢谢大家。
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thanks to the Vice President of the People's Republic of China. It was Haim Jen. Vladimir Vladimirovich, of course, I cannot ignore the current news agenda that exists today. And it often does not concern, of course, the Far East, the development of our interaction with the Asia-Pacific region. For a little more than a month, the armed forces of Ukraine have been striking at the border territories of the Russian Federation. Several subjects are suffering at once. As a whole, how do you assess the situation today, both in the SWO zone on different fronts and in the border area? And today, how great is the threat of nuclear danger, given that the APU is also hitting the Kursk, Zaporozhye end? When we talk about these issues, first of all, we should think about the people who are certainly going through serious trials and suffering from these terrorist acts. And it is the sacred duty of the armed forces to do everything to throw the enemy out of these territories and reliably protect our citizens. And the whole country, of course, should do everything to support people. As for the military side of the matter, I have already talked about it. The enemy's goal was to make us nervous, fuss, transfer troops from one sector to another, and stop our offensive in key areas, primarily in the Donbass. Liberation, which is our primary goal. Did it work or not? No, the enemy did not succeed. Well, first of all, our armed forces stabilized the situation and began to gradually squeeze him out of the border territories. And the second and most important thing is that there are no actions to contain our offensive. On the contrary, by transferring their rather large and well-trained units to these border areas with us, the enemy weakened itself in key areas, and our troops accelerated offensive operations. There have been no such territorial acquisitions for a long time. Only the day before yesterday, for example, the Vostok grouping captured a triangle 7 by 5 kilometers straight in one blow. The grouping of the center operates very successfully in the Donetsk-Pokrovsky direction. There, too, acquisitions are no longer counted in hundreds of meters, but in square kilometers, 4 by 5, 3 by 5, and so on. This is the second one. And last but not least, the enemy is suffering very heavy losses both in manpower and in equipment. I'm not going to list it now. The Ministry of Defense gives this data. I consider them objective because they are confirmed from several sources at once. And this is fraught, on the one hand, with the destruction of the front in the most important areas, and losses can simply lead to the loss of combat capability of all armed forces, which is what we are trying to achieve. So this is a general assessment, and what happens every day, of course, the General Staff of the Ministry of Defense reported to me several times a day on a daily basis. You have already noted that the most important thing is the people and the people who live in these territories, who, of course, protect them. The day before, you visited the point here in Vladivostok. Sorry, I missed it. You said about the nuclear strikes. Power plants. These are very dangerous terrorist attacks. One can only imagine what will happen if we respond in a mirror way. What will happen to the whole part of this Europe? Speaking of what happened the day before, they released the base of the Primorsky flotilla in Vladivostok, and told me that you recently had a conversation on the phone with the commander of the 155th Brigade of Marines. They are now in the basket of their own. When asked if there were domestic problems, the answer was that there were not, and yesterday. when you already communicated with his commander. On the contrary, problems were highlighted. First of all, housing provision. How often do you encounter such contradictions? But this is not a contradiction. Really problems, but you don't always have problems. But the commander of the Brigade 155th, he did not raise this question, because there really is a snow party here. When you yourself chose this place for future construction for housing for military personnel. Construction is underway, and local authorities are helping. Of course, we need to implement these plans in a timely manner, and I am sure they will be implemented. Some other commanders drew attention to real-life issues that need to be resolved in the near future. I also spoke with the commander of the 810th Marine Brigade of the Black Sea Fleet. There is a specific need for housing construction for military personnel who are also performing their tasks in the border zone today, and are acting very successfully, and just heroic guys are fighting heroically for us. By the way, distracting from the question as a whole, one of the enemy's tasks, of course, was to sow panic, shake up the internal political situation in Russia, sow uncertainty in our actions, and so on. But what did it lead to? Consolidation of society, as always happens in such cases in Russia, as evidenced by the fact that the number of people, our men, who feel the need to defend the homeland of the fatherland, has increased dramatically. The number of people who sign contracts with the armed forces has increased. As for social guarantees, of course the country should not just think about it, but solve this problem. The commander of the 810th Brigade of Marines of the Black Sea Fleet told me about this, but the local authorities, I mean the Crimean authorities, are ready to do everything to give land, and they will do it in the near future, of course. If the Defense Ministry has enough land there, the Defense Ministry does not have enough. I have instructed the Ministry of Defense, the General Staff, they are preparing relevant proposals. The necessary resources will be allocated. You have already said that Kiev can negotiate with Russia after the failure of its provocation in the Kursk region. And before that, were there any prospects for a peaceful settlement of the situation? We have already talked about this many times. We have reached almost all parameters of a possible peace agreement with representatives of the government in Kiev. We have agreed on all these parameters. Moreover, the head of the negotiating delegation, and he still heads the ruling faction of the ruling party in the Rada. In Parliament, he signed these agreements. Yes, it was necessary to finalize something else, but in general, the visa is worth it. It's a document. Then Mr. Johnson arrived, as you know. The British authorities do not deny this, they confirm it. He came and instructed the Ukrainians to fight to the last Ukrainian. What is happening today in order to achieve a strategic defeat of Russia? It doesn't work out. And the Ukrainian official authorities have publicly stated that if they had then fulfilled what we agreed with them, and not listened to their masters from other countries, the war would have stopped long ago. But they went the other way, that's the result. Are we ready to negotiate with them? We have never refused this, but not on the basis of some ephemeral requirements, but on the basis of those documents that were agreed and actually initialed in Istanbul. Is there an understanding of which country can become a mediator country this time, if negotiations take place in the future? With us, we respect our friends and partners who, I believe, are sincerely interested in resolving all issues related to this conflict. These are, first of all, the People's Republic of China, Brazil, and India. I am constantly in contact with our colleagues on this issue, and I have no doubt that the leaders of these countries, we have trusting relations with them, sincerely strive to help understand all the details of this complex process, which, of course, I want to remind you, began with a coup in Ukraine in the year 2014. After all, it all started with this. We are constantly being told about human rights, about some principles of international law that everyone should observe. And what is this? The coup d'état is unconstitutional, bloody. What is it? This led to the fact that part of the country's population did not agree with the results and in general with this coup. They began to fight for their rights. Everything eventually resulted in today's conflict. That's what it's all about. But they prefer not to remember this. But we know what's going on. Russian culture and traditions, which our guest spoke about so vividly, will certainly protect our interests. And the interests of those people who are close to us and who are native speakers of the Russian language, Russian culture, and Russian traditions. Vladimir Vladimirovich, we are all well aware that in general, we would like to note this now. Negotiations are possible not directly with Kiev, but with its Western curators. But at the same time, in the case of negotiations, do you think it will still be possible to believe in the future? After all, if you look even at the historical facts, Russia turned out to be deceived. Perhaps you can say that it is ignorant. It was not we who violated the issues of NATO's expansion to the east and the Minsk agreement. We have made conclusions. You understand what the other way is. Yes, we understand who we are dealing with. People who do not appreciate, treat the interests of other countries and peoples without any respect. Unfortunately, there are such people. They easily violate all their obligations, even sign documents. Well, what to do? We just need to look for such forms, such guarantees that would somehow work to some extent. But the main guarantee of security is the growth of the economy and the military potential of the Russian Federation itself. Reliable, stable relations with our partners and allies. Mr. Dear, we have just discussed with Vladimir Vladimirovich that Russia has always tried to find a peaceful solution to the conflict. From the outside, why do you think it was not possible to reach an agreement at the negotiations in Istanbul?
Well, I mentioned to President Putin last night that I happen to be...
I already spoke with President Putin yesterday. I am absolutely a visit to Istanbul, and I spent one day there, and I knew about these negotiations. And at that time, I think at the time that this issue will be closed, because both sides have come to an agreement, have agreed upon a pry. In principle, the parameters of the contract. And from my point of view, I believe that peace needs to be achieved. This affects not only the relations between the two countries, but relations around the world, and one of the collapse of certain chains as a result of the conflict. As far as I understand, parameters were agreed upon. There were foundations for reaching an agreement in Istanbul. Both parties agreed to the provision of the contract. And, of course, on the other hand, we support such agreements. Given that parliaments have fair and both sides have committed themselves. In accordance with this agreement, we all agree that what we agreed on must be respected. And we hope for an agreement that should take place as soon as possible. You said that we failed to reach an agreement in Istanbul, by the way, with the mediation of President Erdogan. But we managed to come to an agreement. This is the whole trick, as evidenced by the signature of the head of the Ukrainian delegation, which initialed this document, which means that the Ukrainian side as a whole was satisfied with the agreements reached, did not enter into force, only because they were given the command not to do it. And there was a desire of the elites of the United States and Europe, in some European countries, to achieve a strategic defeat of Russia. They thought they were going to use it now and bring Russia to its knees and dismember it or whatever else they planned to do. They thought that manna from heaven was about to fall. Now they will achieve their strategic goals, which they have been striving for, maybe for centuries or decades. That's what it's all about. Jones arrived, he said, don't fight to the last Ukrainian. So they are still fighting. And sometimes I got the impression that those who lead Ukraine, as if they are aliens of some kind or foreigners. Well, as a matter of fact, they don't just think. No, I'm serious, you understand, but such losses are colossal. What they will do next, I don't even understand. We need to lower the draft age again now, lower it. Recruit children, as in Germany fascists Hitler, Jugend create. But that doesn't solve the problem. But in general, total mobilization, such, total passes. The next step is to call students now and so on. He managed to bleed the country dry. I repeat once again, it seems that this is not their people. But, strictly speaking, it is clear that relatives of members of the ruling elite mostly live abroad. They got on a plane, and there are no more of them, it's over. They don't really think about the country. This is covered up only by nationalist slogans. That's it. People are being fooled. But, I repeat once again, if there really is such a desire to negotiate, we did not refuse. But on the basis of the agreements that were fixed, reached and fixed in Istanbul. Now let's move on to another topic. Let's get back to what our discussion is about today. Mr. Dear, there is such a thing as a Malaysian economic miracle. It has become possible thanks to the very economic zones that you have created. Tell us, what conditions for doing business and a Russian company are you waiting for yourself?
Well, I met a number of leading Russian companies.
I have met with representatives of several Russian companies, both yesterday and today, but we did not join the simultaneous sanctions.
Vice President of China mentioned we do not accept unilateral sanctions, but we are, of course, trying to resolve
Our Chinese colleagues spoke about this.
confronting any.
We are not entering into an adventure. With whom?
So we focus on.
Therefore, we are developing economic zones of the Russian company Neva.
Companies, I told them, we are an independent country with the centrality. We want to be.
Let's explore.
With Russia more.
We are ready to cooperate with Russia in an effective way.
Extremely delighted that many of them are coming. When I asked them, when are you coming? They said,
Expressed to come next week by October and therefore manifested.
"We'll come in October." So there is interesting progress in interest because, of course, we are fortunate because
I will reach a certain mutual understanding to speak.
also with China these days. We have visible growth registered in the last quarter 5.9%.
Will register.
2% with huge investments, also from the United States, particularly in the digital
Only therefore are implemented.
sector and Germany.
Significant investments. Many countries in particular. We will do whatever is required by the one that outlined.
Plan package that President Putin mentioned, there is
Yes, and experienced. The potential in our business is very large. Outside the INFOB,
we are influenced by others.
they should feel that we are offering a special relationship to Russia as a special friend of our country.
That Malaysia want to offer to Russia as a friend of ours.
Vladimir Vladimirovich, if we talk about our special regimes that exist in the Far East, this is both the free port of Vladivostok and the territory of adjacent development. Here's how you think they are competitive compared to other similar regimes in the Asia-Pacific countries. And are you satisfied with the indicators they are giving now? We strive to create competitive advantages and competitive conditions here. And I'm not going to list everything now, it's all well known, especially to the people who are sitting in this hall. This is the territory of advanced development, free zones, and the free port of Vladivostok, and so on and so on. There are a lot of preferences created here. When we start discussing this in the government, the finance ministry gets nervous all the time. Whatever else you want to invent, but there were so many of us created there, so many preferences. That's enough. You know what I want to say. We, Mr. Deputy Chairman of the People's Republic of China, have now recalled our joint work with him in Armenia, where the Economic Forum was held. He was sent there by the President of the People's Republic of China, our good friend Mr. Xi Jinping. But I am nevertheless personally grateful to him for taking part in this work. She was very interesting. But what I want to say is that this will be unexpected even for our guest and for our audience. Will you reveal the secrets? I'll tell you a secret. And it will be unexpected for our Ministry of Finance. Me. Somewhere one Anton Germanovich got nervous. They are not nervous guys, they have everything in order with their health there. But what I want to say, I talked to our representative office in Harbin. I say, listen to what needs to be done additionally, so that Chinese investors come to the Far East in greater volume. Do you know what he said? And the Chinese authorities do not restrain their entrepreneurs. Anyone who wants to, please, can go to invest and work. But the conditions created by the Chinese authorities in Harbin are more advantageous than those created by us in the Far East. That's what it's all about. The Chinese authorities have been dealing with special economic zones for a long time, have been creating specific conditions for development for a long time, and we, of course, need to take a closer look at the preferences that the Chinese authorities are creating on their territory, including in border areas, in order to attract business from other countries, including from friendly China, so that he comes to invest. We need to analyze everything that we have done in terms of creating these attractive conditions and supplement, perhaps, some tools with some innovations so that entrepreneurs and businesses are really interested, so that they are interested, come and work here. Conditions are being created, and they are generally very good, but there is something to work on. I so, in general, suggested the devil. Mr. January, I can't help but clarify. And what are you doing to ensure that Chinese business stays in China and does not come to work with us? What are you doing today to ensure that Chinese business remains on its territory and does not come to ours? And you don't tell me. Why are you asking such questions? Them? That's why I ask, because it's provocative. They remain, on the contrary, to attract them to us. In the world economy, including investing in the economy and in the economy of the Far East. And also, let's look at the cooperation between the years of the Far East. And I will mention this topic already. And during our meeting in Harbin, we discussed this issue. You need to look at this issue from two sides. On the one hand, the northeast of China and the far east of Russia maintain very good cooperation, that is, cooperation. And we have a solid foundation of cooperation. Therefore, there is already a good trend in the development of cooperation between these two regions. And the first 7 places in the current year in the framework of cooperation with the northeast of China, the Russian Far East. The turnover exceeded 60. This is already almost more than 100% of the total trade turnover with our countries. Therefore, the trend of cooperation is very different. We need to look to the future. First of all, you need to fix it. There is a very good basis of cooperation between the two fountains. And the Russian Far East has good cooperation potentials: transport, agricultural logistics, agriculture, energy, capacity. Therefore, we have a very wide range of cooperation. We need to consolidate the results of cooperation in these traditional industries, but this is not enough. We also need to look at the future. Dirt on the interaction industry. This includes the green development of the digital economy, as I think, and also the marine industry. Of course, there are also cultural industries. Art. Cooperation. I will share my experience with you. Today I visited 2 branches of universities in Primorsky Krai. It's a movie. In Primory. And this trip made an impression on me. I specifically looked at these objects. That is, as schoolboys. From the 3rd grade to the 3rd year, they all played great musical instruments, performed classical music. They danced in the Swan Lake Palette, and all these children. If we have a very good cooperation. And I am very glad to notice that a large number of students come to Russia.
Studying.
As I know, students have already arrived from the province this year. So between these two, likewise, strengthening cooperation, the Chinese government always, all Chinese enterprises, whether public or private, invest in the economy of the world, invest in the economy. This is not the East, invest the economy. Therefore, we have very broad prospects for cooperation. Mr. Dear, but we already have 2 secrets revealed here. We want to get the 3rd secret from you. Tell us, the Malaysian business is interested in coming to the territory of the free port of Vladivostok development transfer. In order to fully work here.
For the region, something new.
As for, of course, this is something new for us. This is my first visit here. We have had a number of discussions, but in general, if we look at the Russian Federation, then, of course, it attracts our attention. We are seeing an increase in trade, an increase in investment, an expansion of interaction in the energy sector, in industry, as well as in digital technologies. More and more students are sent to study. Of course, we need to explore these possibilities. We are not as powerful as China, but it will take time. Vladimir Vladimirovich, the hall. It's nice that there is actually some kind of reaction when we hear the applause. We understand that everything is going right. Vladimir Vladimirovich, if you look at the data presented by the Ministry of Social Development, over the past 10 years, investments in the Far East have already amounted to 4 trillion and 200 billion rubles. These are already invested funds. Is it a lot or a little? And what do you think? These are the investment rates that are there. Will they continue, given that the day before, Yuri Petrovich Trutnov asked you to raise the goal of 12 trillion by the 30th year? I think it's a lot, but it's not enough. As usual, good, but not enough. Yes, and indeed, Yuri Petrovich traditionally reported on what was done over the previous year. Traditionally, we have also participated in the launch of new projects and new enterprises. There is an opinion that these investments can be increased by at least another 1.5 trillion, up to 12 trillion. And I think it's absolutely realistic. Vladimir Vladimirovich, back to the latest developments. At the end of August, Pavel Durov, the founder and head of Telegram, was detained in Paris. The court eventually decided to leave him under judicial supervision and pay a certain amount. Is this how you assess the actions of the authorities of the Fifth Republic, and did Moscow not want what Paris has done now? And I can't help but ask, the same Telegram channels wrote a lot that you had a meeting with him in Baku. Is that so? I met Mr. Durov once in Moscow many years ago. He was just talking about plans. I meet with business regularly, and here he was also at one of the meetings in the Kremlin, but I don't remember when. But many years ago. I repeat, he talked about his business development plans. Since then, we have not seen him, we have never maintained contact with him. Why should we meet in Baku? I don't really understand. I didn't even know he was there, I have no idea about it. I had no idea about it. That if there is a desire, there are a lot of business representatives here. Everyone knows, I never refuse. We regularly hold such meetings, both within the framework of associations of our entrepreneurs, and individually considering certain projects, especially if the business needs some guarantees from the state. Both I and the Prime Minister, federal ministers, regional authorities. In any case, I always set them up for this. We are not shutting ourselves off from business. Therefore, if he had any desire, he could meet me in Moscow. I don't know anything about that either. I assumed that he lives in Moscow, in my opinion. I don't know where he is. In Dubai, these are the people of the world, billionaires, they can afford to travel anywhere. We didn't have any complaints about him. I know that there have been complaints from many countries, taking into account the fact that the platform is used in a certain way by some people, by some structures that can damage the economy with their activities, or in the security sphere by one or another state. I think that the Russian government could also have some questions for him, but all platforms of this kind sin with this. If they do this to Durov, then it is probably necessary to close others too, arrest them, or put them under house arrest, or some other arrest related to restriction of freedom. Therefore, the action itself, the actions of the authorities, is not very clear to me, since they are selective in nature. Do you mean the French authorities? Thank you, and we turn again to the topic of our meeting today. Mr. Ibrahim, according to the results of last year, your country received a record number of Russian tourists, 110,000 people. The indicator has grown by 37% over the year, and this is clearly not the limit. In order for the figure to grow, does the Malaysian airline plan to launch direct flights from Russia to the country's resorts?
Yes, of course. We should not preclude.
Yes, of course. We should not block Aeroflot from making direct flights to Russia. We are indeed seeing an increase. Russian tourists. We treat them extremely carefully. For the growth of this flow, it is necessary to open direct air communications. We are working on it as quickly as possible. In addition, more awareness is needed among the Malaysian public. It would be useful for them to know about that it is a peaceful country, a beautiful country, and viable country. Of course, it's difficult. There is something that does not exist in Russia, and to increase. It seems to me that Russian tourists are trying to communicate with each other's countries. Malaysia.
We are not dictated by any
Anyway, prejudices with Russia.
to have that sort of special relations with Russia as we have with many countries. I think once you go there, you will find out that Malaysia is truly Asia.
If you come to Malaysia, then what to see in Russia? I think we can tell. And what then is the theme of Russia for those tourists who go to Malaysia to watch? That's what the real Asia is, in your opinion. How can you, Prime Minister, ask me about this?
We're culturally vibrant, the multiracial society. We have a strong ethnic, indigenous, and also Malay.
Powerful, in particular the population. We are a rich and diverse culture.
Chinese ethnic minorities,
We also have an impressive Chinese minority.
indigenous tribes. We have
There is representatives. The Indian diaspora, again, is the indigenous population that I mentioned.
beautiful beaches.
Beautiful beaches, theatrical climate.
This equatorial climate is, we don't have winters, so you can have your swim.
We have it all year round. It seems to me that this is a great advantage.
Difficulty with travel because you
It's always very difficult for me when you go, all the time you ask the question, will there be a winter for me, won't there? I'll have to get dressed. In Malaysia, if you're into something. In the hall there was more smiling forest on this phrase that, you will feel good and warm. I was in Malaysia. I can confirm everything that has just been said. Vladimir Vladimirovich, not to mention tourism. And you visit Russian regions a lot. At the same time, domestic tourism in our country as a whole is also developing. According to the government, 83.5 million Russians chose to travel in Russia in the 23rd year. This is more by 23% than in the 21st. At the same time, by the way, Defoe is in the lead. There are actually a lot of people coming here. More than 6 million people were there last year. In general, what is the economic effect of such an active growth of the domestic tourist flow? Tourism is one of the most effectively developing sectors of the economy in many countries of the world, which is far to go. The number of our tourists, let's say in Turkey, is somewhere under 5 million people. It is simply the most important item of income and budget of the Republic of Turkey. And tourism is becoming more and more effectively functioning branch of the economy in many countries of the world. This should also be the case in Russia, bearing in mind the huge tourism potential. Therefore, the government has adopted a whole program for the development of domestic tourism. We have already talked a lot about this here. I probably won't say anything new. We need to develop infrastructure, take care of nature, so that the development of tourism does not adversely affect the environment. We have many programs, 5 Cs, Lake Baikal. Surely many people know about it, hear about it. Benefits for the creation of for the construction of small hotels, including the creation of buildings and structures of a non-capital nature, and so on. All this gives results, thank God, really. Such a crazy region in terms of its tourist opportunities, as the Far East, of course, attracts and will attract more and more tourists' attention. It is very good that our citizens are guided to a large extent by our capabilities of our country. This is to stay in the country of your language, your culture, not face the problems of crossing state borders, customs, and so on, and enjoy communicating with nature either, or with our history, traditions, and so on. Very interesting. It's exciting just, but we need to do a lot to support this process. Well, what does it give people? Those who live in areas that are visited by tourists. This is simply an increase in the standard of living, because it is an increase in the level of income at all levels, both budgetary, and in budgets of all levels, and specifically citizens bring a certain income. And the more attractive one or another region is, the more private business it has, investing money.
частный бизнес вкладывает денег. То есть это
In other words, this is a win-win revolver operation.
проигрышное.
We will do everything to develop domestic tourism further. But this is a perspective. Even if you look at the figures that are available today, in principle, I think they say that everything is fine in the country's economy. We have 2 and 4% unemployment, a record low. But at the same time, if you look at the statistics again, there is now a shortage of personnel in key sectors of the economy. How to fill in the gap? Because, for example, 47% of industrial enterprises had a shortage in January. And such a low unemployment rate is an indicator that the economy is developing at a good pace, or are there just physically few of us? Everything is never good. If, below, what should we always strive for? Well, yes, I have already said. I recently recalled Faust. Stop for a moment. It's fine. This, in general, is not our method. We must always strive to achieve new frontiers. And everything is never good. But on the whole, the Russian economy is certainly developing steadily. If last year we were happy that our GDP growth was 3 to 4%, 3 to 4%. In the first half of this year, yesterday my colleagues and I discussed what we are going to talk about today. I said 4%. Mr. Oreshkin corrected it. In the first half of the year, 4 to 6% growth. But of course, this is a good indicator for our economy. I think there will be a correction by the end of the year, but on the whole, we can count on at least a repeat of the results of last year. But most likely it would be more growth. This is the main indicator of the state of the economy. But there is, as I said, everything does not happen well. We have 2% inflation in Malaysia. Unfortunately, we have more, it has reached. We have a target figure of about 4, and it reached more than 9% recently, 2.92. However, it is now trending downward. Already less than 9, 8 and 9, and a downward trend. And that's good. As for what we physically lack. Yes. Even Solzhenitsyn, whom Mr. Prime Minister recalled, Sasayevich said that the main task of the state is to save the people. Of course, we need to solve demographic problems and take care of families with children and so on. But the labor market is really in a unique position. 2 and a little percent, 2 and 4 in my opinion. This has never happened in our history. This is due to the needs of real production. How can this be solved? First, of course, I repeat, we need to take care of the population, increase the birth rate, create conditions for people to have a large family, so that it would be fashionable to have many children. As once in Russia there were 10 people in families. But the second direction is to increase labor productivity so that fewer workers can achieve great results. What is it and in what way? In what way it is possible to achieve an increase in labor productivity? The Deputy Chairman of the People's Republic of China mentioned some methods and tools. It is necessary to introduce artificial intelligence. It is necessary, I will add, to introduce modern methods of production management, to robotize. In our country, I recall Japan, which we overtook in terms of purchasing power priority, became the fourth economy in the world, pushing it a little. But robots, in my opinion, are 10 times more per 1,000 workers. 10 times. We have a lot to work on here. Please, robotization. We need to study biology, genetics, especially in agriculture. We have something to do, and we will move in all these directions. Sorry, simple shots. It is necessary, of course, to prepare personnel. This is the most important task of the state. That is why a new national project has appeared, and is appearing. That's what the frames are called. Well, I will move on further economic issues. Vladimir Vladimirovich, we are meeting here a week before the next meeting of the central bank. At the previous one, it was decided that the rate would be 18%. By the way, Andrei Leonidovich Kostin is sitting in the first row, already saying that on the sidelines of the forum, that he is waiting for the 18% rate to be saved this time. At the same time, over the past year, banks have increased the volume of unsecured mortgage lending by 3.5 trillion rubles. And the monthly growth rates here remain very high, and corporate lending has also grown by 2.3%. The central bank provides data. Here's how you can explain this contradiction. A contradiction between the high station that is now there, and at the same time, lending is at a very good pace. As experts believe, this is largely due to 2 points. The first one is that consumer lending, it remains at a high level because individuals, they are not very sensitive to the key rate. The first one. And secondly, as for corporate lending, first of all, certain enterprises' plans have not been approved, and nevertheless, despite the increase in the key rate, they continue to be credited first. And secondly, we have finally made a decision, according to which a measure of support is being implemented for certain sectors of the economy. There are state instruments related to the support, in fact, subsidizing of certain rates by industry and for large projects. I think that explains it. By the way, the head of the central bank, Vera Nabiulina, said that there are no risks to financial stability, but at the same time noted that the scale of overheating of the economy in the first half of the year was the highest in the last 16 years. Do you think there are any risks to stability today, and how are you going to cool the situation if it needs to be done? Here is such a cool rise. Increase in the key rate, cancellation of preferential mortgages. It is now supported by benefits in it mortgages, in the Far East, in the Arctic by family mortgages. But these are the ways this cooling is provided, which you mentioned. But another factor is the stable work of the government, the Ministry of Finance, to balance the budget. I'm talking about investments. We ourselves have already noted the figures that exist in the Far East, but at the same time, the fixed capital in the 23rd year, according to Rostat, the investment growth was about 9%, as much as 0.8%, and this is after the rise, which was in the 22nd year. The trend continues today. Here's how you think. Will the same rate of investment continue, and what can prevent it? It will not be easy to maintain the same pace of investment, bearing in mind the circumstances that we have just talked about with you. But it is necessary to strive for this. For this purpose, those special support tools that I have talked about are being invented. But, I repeat, it will not be easy to keep investments in the same volume. But the government should think about where and in what areas to support business so that there is no noticeable, serious and harmful failure for the economy as a whole. Now there is another topic that is not directly related to what we are discussing here today, not with the Russian economy, not the Far East. This is the theme of the US election race. I can't help but ask. You said before that you have, probably you can name your favorite on it, but he dropped out of the race. Who's new? And in November, when the results of this race become known, will you call to congratulate the new head of state or not? We have not been on the phone with representatives of some European states and the United States for a long time. Although we have not refused these contacts, they limit them. Although, of course, certain information can be exchanged through various channels, primarily through the channels of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As for the favorites, it's not for us to determine. This is still the choice of the American people. And I told you, our favorite, if I may say so, was the current president, Mr. Biden. Here it is. He was also removed from the race, but he recommended that all his supporters support Ms. Harris. But we will do the same, we will support her. This is firstly, and secondly. Bequeathed, then it is necessary. Yes. Secondly, she laughs so expressively and contagiously that it indicates that she is doing well. And if everything is fine with her, then this Trump, he has led as many restrictions and sanctions against Russia as any president has ever imposed for him before. And if Ms. Harris is doing well, then maybe she refrains from such actions. Ultimately, the choice is up to the American people, and we will respect that choice. Speaking of the states, in early August, there was an exchange of prisoners between Russia and the United States. Thanks to the assistance of which countries did this become possible at all? It turns out that in some cases it is still possible to conduct a dialogue with the West. And I will immediately supplement the same question. In an interview with TASS, our country's ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, noted that more than 60 Russians remain prisoners in US prisons. Here they have a chance to return to their homeland. We always treat all citizens of the Russian Federation who need state assistance equally, and we will do this in the future, first of all. Secondly, as for the exchanges that took place, many countries took part in this work, in this mission. Well, for example, as for the journalist of the United States, who worked under the roof of a journalist, to be more precise, but clearly carried out intelligence missions and tasks. At the first stage, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, took an active part in this work, for which we are also grateful to him, because it eventually led to the return of our citizens to their homeland. And the President of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, provided a Turkish platform for the final solution of these issues, as well as some other countries from the Arab world, from some other states, showed goodwill here, and in the end, I think that in the interests of all who participated in this process, we achieved the final positive the result. The most important of which is, of course, the return home of our citizens, including those who performed special missions in the interests of the motherland abroad. Thank you, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Hall, applause.
Thank you.
Mr. Deere, let's return to the topic of our meeting today and talk about the prospects for the growth of trade turnover with Russia. You have already noted the day before, at a meeting with Vladimir Vladimirovich, that there are prospects, and it is necessary to do this. At the same time, according to the Ministry of Economic Development, today we have a free trade agreement between the U.S., which includes Russia, Iran, Vietnam, and Serbia. And it has already been decided that the same agreement will be signed with Mongolia. There is also a process of negotiations with Indonesia and a number of other countries. Does Malaysia have similar ideas? We see free trade. No, there are no restrictions. And I assured President Putin that we will continue to do this. We have good relations with Iran and with many other countries. If everything will be fine, then we will continue to develop free trade. Without a special regime, we can see that there is a new wave of interest from both sides and from the Malaysian side. We will continue to develop this area further. We offer business, community. We will bring delegations from banks as well. Industrial delegations. What's important? We will see faster changes, more positive changes. In terms of trade, exchange between Russia and Malaysia. And we hope that we can achieve this as soon as possible. Vladimir Vladimirovich, in your speech, you spoke about the way to solve the problem of the projected shortage of electricity in the Far East. But if we talk about the whole country, is there enough electricity generation today? It depends on which regions. In Siberia, let's say there are excess generation. In the Far East, there is a deficit, and it will, unfortunately, increase if the necessary measures are not taken in a timely manner. In the European part, there is also a need to think about timely repairs, but also deep modernization. There are plans, some are being developed, some have already been approved. The main thing is to execute everything in a timely manner and establish such economically justified work in this area, and make decisions on time. But speaking of energy, there is another issue, probably related to foreign markets. At the end of this year, the agreement on the supply of Russian gas in transit through Ukraine to the EU will expire. The head of the Kiev regime has already stated that he is not going to renew the contract. In general, what do you think are Europe's energy prospects, and are the voices of those who will suffer heard at all? The head of Gazprom, on the contrary, is also in the front row, as is VTB. I will also address Germanovich. But this is good, because everyone is interested in developing their business in the Far East. But as for Ukraine, we are not abandoning this transit, oddly enough. Why? Because we intend, their company Gazprom, to fulfill all our obligations to our customers with whom there are long-term contracts. But there, one of the mandatory components of this joint work is transit. There is a transit contract that ends on the 31st of December, Alexei, this year. But if Ukraine refuses this transit, well, we can't force them. And our main consumers in Europe, apparently, do not want to do this. Although they provide comprehensive assistance, military and financial support, whatever Ukraine wants. Ukraine refuses our transit. The volumes of gas that come to Europe, they will be reduced. They will follow other routes, in particular through the Turkish Stream, maybe partly through the Blue Stream, to Turkey too. Although this is for domestic consumption, but nevertheless, they will create and help energy stability in Europe. But it's their choice. How this will affect them, I don't know until the end. We are dealing with our own issues, and when they let us in and deal with their own, then I just don't even know how to characterize the attitude towards our allies and partners, which is demonstrated by so many in the United States and in the same Ukraine. It is very strange. It's just not clear to me. But they blew up this gas pipeline along the bottom of the Baltic Sea, the Nord Stream, blew up both threads of the Nord Stream 1 and one thread of the Nord Stream 2. By the way, there is one that exists, it is in working condition. What prevents the same German government from pressing the button, agreeing with us and turning it on? How much is it? 25 billion cubic meters of one. No. 27.5 billion cubic meters of gas would immediately go to Europe, to Germany. Why they don't do it, I don't understand. They can receive through the territory of Ukraine. They can receive through the Turkish Stream. But they cannot use the thread that runs along the bottom of the Baltic Sea. In my opinion, this is some kind of professional defamation, schizophrenia. It's just nonsense. Why? Well, if they don't want to, don't. We will gradually increase our supplies to other regions of the world. We have a good project with the People's Republic of China for a long time, before any of these crises in Europe. And in the Ukrainian direction of the project for supplies to the People's Republic of China. Next year, we will reach the design capacity of 38 billion cubic meters. From the Far East, from here Sakhalin, Vladivostok, also to the People's Republic of China, plus another 10 billion cubic meters. We are exploring other routes. I repeat, this has nothing to do with the events in Ukraine. It's just our agreements that were reached many years ago. We are implementing all of this. Plus, we will develop gas liquefaction. And here they are trying to create a problem for us. He knows this better than anyone else. But it is still developing, and Russia's share in the supply of liquefied natural gas to the world markets is gradually increasing. It's not as big as we would like, but we will do it anyway, no matter what difficulties they are trying to create for us. We will still do it. After all, what is the problem here? No matter who and how they try to shut down our energy sector, it is impossible, because production is at the limit, in accordance with the needs of the world market. It's not easy, you know. It's impossible. You can achieve. Let's imagine that they took tomorrow and closed everything, gas, our oil, and so on. But the global economy will not survive such a closure. It's just that prices will skyrocket, but they will still buy. It is impossible without it. That's the whole point. After all, when our detractors and those who impose illegal restrictions, which the Deputy Chairman of the People's Republic of China spoke about, do it, they do it from the heart, not from a great mind. In such cases they say, because there is no result. They are guided only by what? Arrogance and self-confidence. And the result is the opposite of what was expected. Therefore, we will resolve our issues. Yes, there may be some losses, but we will decide anyway. And those who do not want to cooperate with us, well, let them bear losses then. We see what is happening in European countries. Many of them are teetering on the brink of recession, and the situation will worsen, because those who supply them with energy resources primarily care about their own national interests in the same states. Well, they supply 2-3 times, or how many percent, 50, probably 60 more than our energy carrier, gas, is worth. I mean, first of all, of course, the European economy, including Germany, which is designed for our energy resources, is going through very serious tests. Many industries are simply shutting down. That's the whole point. But it's not our choice. We're ready. Please arrange with Poland for Poland to open the pipeline systems. They exist. The Poles closed the Yamal of Western Europe. Now Ukraine is also closing the route along the bottom of the Baltic Sea. Nord Stream 2 is not included, but they do not want us to. There will be damage for them. There will be a certain reduction in income for us, but nothing. Gazprom will supply more domestically. Also good. We will develop social gasification. About gasification, let's clarify a little bit about Gazprom, by the way. Alexei Borisovich named the volume that went along the branches of the Nord Stream. What do you think, given the projects that are currently being implemented in Central Asia, with Iran and with China? Is there any prospects for Gazprom to restore the previous volume of supplies to foreign markets? Well, I have already mentioned this, that we are reaching the design capacity for supplies to the People's Republic of China. As for supplies to Central Asia, to Iran, this is also unrelated. I want to understand what was clear, not directly related to the Ukrainian events. It's just that the economies of these countries are developing actively. They need additional resources. That's it. The same Uzbekistan, I have already said this, but it is well known. Population growth in Uzbekistan is 1 million a year. 1 million a year plus. There are already 37 million people there. Very soon there will be 40, and so on. The economy is also growing. They have obligations in foreign markets. Of course, the Republic just needs additional resources. It was -21 in Tashkent the year before last. This has never happened before in history. They need it, and we have such resources.
располагаем такими ресурсами.
We will coordinate our actions with Turkmenistan, of course, but Iran has been asking us for delivery for a long time. But it is also a very convenient place for us. The deposit is nearby. We are now thinking, I believe, that these are fully implemented projects, bearing in mind that the markets are huge in neighboring countries with Iran. Just a colossal need. There are different opportunities here, and we will explore different markets. We will work according to the word. We will compress, as I have already said, and so on.
Как я уже сказал, и так далее.
We will gradually restore the volume of sales, and there is no doubt.
И сомнений нет.
And we will actually develop the economy. We do not have enough gas generation in many regions, here in the Far East.
Не хватает же газовой генерации.
It is necessary to unite. Gazprom has such plans to unite the European part of the gas transportation system, the Far East, in order to re-implement the results accordingly. All of this is in our plans. All of this will be implemented. Let's continue talking about energy. Mr. Marji, Malaysia is the second largest oil and gas producing country in Southeast Asia. And by the way, those very famous twin towers of Peter I in the capital are just named after the largest energy company in the country. How do you assess the current situation on the oil and gas market in the whole world? And is Malaysia considering any joint projects with Russia in the energy sector today?
We are discussing the issue of energy transition.
We are now actively discussing the issue of energy transfer. We believe that Russia has.
Of course, still continuing exploration.
Absolutely.
Because
We continue the exploration project, and, of course, we have a task to weaken independence.
oil or coal, but still for now it is
But we clearly understand that energy prices continue.
import of coal
Very important,
about $600 million. So temporarily this
in the amount of $600 million. I.
is still required until we are able to
Still traditional energy sources, until we implement the use.
energy. But for now, the focus is there.
We renew energy sources that are more environmentally friendly. We understand that an important player, therefore, we certainly read into certain synergistic relationships.
Hydrogen, green technology,
Although, of course, it cannot be stopped, and we need and are important technologies.
to progress as a
Progress of us as a country that cannot afford to be completely dependent.
Thank you. Vladimir Vladimirovich, you have already mentioned, look, that the answer is now actively developing. And it is also used for the transportation of energy resources. You said that by the 30th year, the indicator is planned to increase to 150 million cars and on transportation. Do you think that the construction of not only the infrastructure, but also the ships themselves that will run along this route, is proceeding at a sufficient pace today? And for example, the day before you also visited the place where a new line of merchant ships will be built here near Vladivostok in the future. This is an issue that really should be at the center of our attention, and it is mainly related to the provision of transportation. And with those ships, ships that transfer cargo, and those that provide the wiring of ships.
Кораблями, которые грузы перевозят, и с теми, которые обеспечивают проводку судов. Это
This is primarily an ice-breaking fleet. Russia has a unique ice-breaking fleet, unique.
уникально.
We have 34 diesel icebreakers of different classes, levels, and 7 operating nuclear icebreakers.
И 7 действующих атомных ледоколов.
4 are under construction, or rather 3 are already under construction. And the 4th one will be laid down now at the beginning of the 25th year. This is 7 plus 4, 11, and another very high power, unprecedented high power, in my opinion. 136, something like that, thousands of horsepower. If measured in horsepower, this is the so-called leader.
Лидер
It is already being built here in Vladivostok, on Zvezda. And this whole grouping will certainly provide year-round transportation, because the new icebreaker, especially the leader, is not only powerful, it is also wide, and will provide wiring for caravans of ships.
караванов судов. Это
This is the first one.
первое.
Secondly, the ships themselves need to be built, which will be transported. And of course, We will expand the capabilities of our shipbuilding industry in the European part. We just discussed this yesterday with the head of VTB Costin, and with representatives delegated by him to our United Shipbuilding Company. The prospects for the development of the European part. And here we correctly paid attention. We looked at the place for the future shipyard yesterday. I am sure we will build it, as well as with great difficulties, but still we have built a star here in the Far East, in Vladivostok. We need to build infrastructure, port facilities, provide services in these ports, ensure the safety of navigation, take care of the environment, and so on. This is all in the complex. Everything is planned, implemented, and I am sure it will be implemented. Taking into account climate change, of course, the movement along the Northern Sea route, of course, and our capabilities. The icebreaker fleet should be, and I am sure will be provided all year round. This is very important for our economy, for the global economy, for the economy of our friends. In particular, the People's Republic of China shows such keen interest in joint work in this area. We invite everyone to do this and are confident of success. By the way, speaking of housing construction now, Vladimir Vladimirovich, how closed is the need for it in the Far East? We know that there is a preferential mortgage here, it remains. At the same time, it was cancelled across the country. As I promised, I quote the words of Herman Oskarovich Greff, that with the exit from the preferential mortgage program, he said it was delayed. Do you think that today we have solved the housing problem in the whole country, if we have closed the preferential program? Mr. Prime Minister quoted Tolstoy, Chekhov, and I'm Greff. Quote, also among the classics is included. As for the construction, we have achieved, I think, outstanding results in construction. We have never had such a volume before, as the results of last year. What is it, 103 million or something? 110 million. It's true, our task was to get to 120, but 110 is already a very good indicator. Of course, due to the fact that the preferential mortgage has ended, of course, this cannot but affect the housing construction market. But, I repeat, it is now supported by preferential mortgages of the Far East, the Arctic, family, it preferential mortgages. But after all, the meaning and actions of the financial authorities, the government is, as you said, to cool down this market somewhat. Also quoted once again, then Nabulina said, well, that's good, but in general, of course, this effect is expected, so that there is no overheating of the market, and so that it does not affect macroeconomic indicators. But nevertheless, what I want to draw attention to is that we have a very good foundation for construction. Here it is possible to quote him more often. They used to quote him, now less. Mr. Mutko, he is also a great specialist with us, and is clearly, aptly expressed on some issues, but in any case he works. But very well in that part. From the bottom of my heart. From everything. But it works with a good result. I say this without any irony, without any jokes. And the result is 110 million tons. Sorry, 110 million square meters have been set up, including taking into account the work of his corporation, which he heads. But what I want to say is that we have a very good foundation. 160, maybe even a little more, 163, 165 million tons of groundwork for the construction that has begun. Therefore, I think there will be no failure next year. I have one more question for you, Mr. President, and then we will move on to other topics. One, perhaps, it seems to me, of the most discussed topics of recent times is that a law that legalizes cryptocurrency mining comes into force in November. Earlier, the federal law 259th of digital assets came into force. Does this mean that Russia is moving towards world leadership in the field of cryptocurrencies, and that in the future there may be other new legislation that will regulate this area? I think that Russia today is one of the world leaders in mining. And this is due to the surplus of energy capacity in Siberia. But there are certain issues that have arisen recently. Of course, we are glad that businesses that work in this area are making good money, but this surplus of energy resources in Siberia should not turn into a deficit that would be a deterrent to the development of Siberian regions. Because mining is good, but the construction of housing, industrial, social facilities, the supply of electricity to the planned production facilities is no less, and maybe even more important. That is why the government has made a decision that should structure this work accordingly. But as for the digital ruble, the decision of the central bank has been made. Now we are just working to increase these volumes. The digital ruble is simply one of the types of currency, the national currency, which will be used by both participants in economic activity and citizens. Thank you. But as promised, we move on to another topic. Mr. Ibrahim, let's not bypass the Middle East conflict. Is that how you see the way out of the situation?
As I have consistently said, we cannot use the narrative
We can follow that on,
in the media or
which actively appears in the media, primarily Western,
all began with 7th October.
that it all supposedly started.
It all began with colonization. It all began with the Nakba in 1948.
It started
It all began because of the reluctance to accept the resolutions of the United Nations consistently and of continued harassment of settlers
I'm not stopping.
in the West Bank. So I think we need to put the narrative right.
We absolutely must.
Do we want a solution? Yes.
The situation.
I commend
We are the solution. Absolutely. I welcome.
Foreign Minister Wang Yi have taken initiative
We know that.
and many countries.
I have done a lot.
I think the majority of countries
Situations, which countries, I would say, share this position, including recognition.
is it not happening? Because of
But why do they happen?
transitions.
Because we see the position of Israel and, unfortunately, the positions.
We get the full one from the side.
Standing ovation.
But, in fact, we have seen that the United States and Congress are committing those monstrous crimes.
Where's the humanity?
And I ask our question, holds your humanity yours?
Preach to us about human rights.
You are constantly lecturing us about the value of democracy and human rights, and there is no obvious contradiction in how you handle this situation.
And what we need in this world
What we really need in today's world,
coherent message.
absolutely equestrian and clear message. Yes, we respect freedom and dignity,
Yes, we must oppose all forms of
and we must resist all forms.
because what is the issue in Palestine?
What's the problem now?
Not only in Gaza, but all of Palestine
Several in the Gaza Strip.
of dispossession.
This is primarily a problem.
You conquer, you take people's land, you dispossess, you kill them,
I limit their land.
you detain them, you take over their houses, you treat them as a.
And they are formed like this.
This is not
Them, they turned out to be that, of course, Malaysia is a small country, and I am clearly aware of our limits. That is why I am very grateful to my dear friends present in this hall for their support because of the position of their countries.
Absolutely. So many problems.
Not only in the world, but everyone who believes.
people are saying, why are you not doing
Because people are outraged.
when people are being killed?
Absolutely nothing. Suddenly there are situations when people every day. I hope so.
There
In that,
sanity will prevail to those who have influence in the world, because they are finally accountable.
The head, but specifically the situation.
Can continue to do this gross injustice and tolerate
It should no longer be an outrageous situation. With this monstrous cruelty, we cannot think that we are all safe. This situation is unacceptable. We must all fight for the justice of humanity. And everything is determined by skin color, religion.
justice means
It can't be like that. If we're talking, this is because people don't.
Palestinians are treated as human beings, not as slaves or second-class people. Thank you.
Vladimir Vladimirovich continues the topic of the Middle East conflict. Moscow has repeatedly brought its position to both sides of it. They hear us. Both sides of the Palestinian conflict because of the Palestinian conflict. I can join a lot of what was said by our guest. Russia's position, it is not of a conjunctural nature. It has always been based on decisions that took place earlier and which, in my opinion, should be the basis of the settlement. First of all, the creation of two independent states. By the way, this position is shared by a lot of people in the world, including, oddly enough, many in the United States share this position. But, unfortunately, this issue has not been resolved, and it lies at the heart of both today's aggravation of the situation and today's confrontation. For our part, including today's problem is connected with the attempts of the United States to monopolize the settlement, because the United States is not considered as a country with neutral positions. And that's the problem. But I repeat once again, we will do everything that depends on us. I spoke about this at a recent meeting with Mr. Abbas, who was in Moscow to contribute to the settlement of this long-standing and very serious crisis. And as for the humanitarian issue, of course, we are trying to resolve the issues related to the hostages. Moreover, we are also achieving certain results here, which we are very happy about and will try to do in the future. Thank you. Let's move on to another topic. Mr. Ibrahim, in your opening remarks, you noted and reminded that next year Malaysia will be the chairman of the ASEAN. What will be the main priorities in the work, and how will cooperation and unification with Russia be built?
Because that region, sub-region, is the most peaceful in the world.
It is the largest economy and region in the world,
Most vibrant.
and developing.
Of course, its centrality is independent.
And the most important thing is that they occupy an independent political position.
Powers, and we maintain excellent relations with our neighbors.
Position.
We are diplomatic
We are having special economic zone to promote and
relationships
more
with the neighbors.
in the poorer
We strive, develop economic activity.
in South Thailand. With Singapore, we have a special economic zone in
The north of Malaysia will help attract investment.
encourage more business and investments. And with Indonesia, we have excellent relations.
Naturally, as I have already noted, strong relations with the countries of the region, including
Contentious, decision is to continue with bilateral mechanisms, multilateral mechanisms. The only issue that we have to confront is Myanmar. It's not spreading in terms of
There should be two at the moment.
activities, but it's causing some problems because, for example, Malaysia has to contend with 200,000 refugees from Myanmar. And I thought my position as ASEAN chair is of course to try and resolve. We don't want to dictate. See, the problem, the failure sometimes in dealing with Myanmar, it's the military junta. You want to ensure democratic transition. You have, I think what is important for Myanmar is peace. Get all the parties to speak and talk to each other and maintain peace. Then they decide for themselves what form of government they want to have. And do not dictate. And our problem with Myanmar in the past is to have, to try and dictate to them what sort of government they should have. So in our 5-point consensus, we think that just respect these fundamental rules will move. But on a different note, different level, although we do have growing issues about
Cooperation.
particularly with the Philippines and China, our position is always to encourage the Philippines to continue to engage actively and try to resolve in the true spirit of ASEAN.
We see
We need to assist
take a place.
to engage with our friends because we always feel that there's a way for the future.
This is what we strive for.
And I think also taking that position because of centrality,
What?
we do not want this region
And the principle is not the apple of states.
region for the superpowers. If we have a problem in the region, we resolve it in the region. And we do not support any intrusion of other powers into.
We did not want and do not welcome any interference in our region.
And that's why I think my presence here in Vladivostok is to convey that message. That I think,
In Vladivostok,
contrary to some of the perceptions, we feel that
And we believe that our task is primarily to provide
that we serve our people, that economically it has to be vibrant.
that we should not serve our people, our peoples, our countries, serve their interests, maintain diplomatic relations.
And Russia included.
including Russia.
Of course, some countries in the world have. Certain, Russia is with us, our country. We have some questions that we,
So I think we will start that tradition. So in ASEAN,
Supported in.
we want to maintain that sort of relation.
we would like to support
Very good relations with Premier Li Qiang.
relationships. We have beautiful ones
I mean, we can agree on every
with many countries. This does not mean that we agree with everything,
French.
with all the questions.
Positions.
issue of the more contentious issue with the South.
Dear friends, here we have a question.
Unhappy. You have a problem with China because of the border. We have a problem with every single country.
There are problems for each proper.
Those border in Malaysia, because Malaysia is central. We have a slight border problem with Thailand.
We have difficulties, types of functions that we solve.
Is that a problem? No, it's not a problem. These are issues that we discuss. It does not in any way seem to be antagonistic. Why is it when it comes to China, you expect us to go and quarrel with them? I think we will continue to negotiate. Yes, we agree, and some issues we disagree. But in my experience, now I've taken over almost 2 years.
We agree with the minister with whom we are the prime minister.
A problem with China. So why must countries
There are some very serious problems.
insist that you have a problem? I don't.
Asian countries consider serious
So I think that should be the ASEAN position.
problems.
And
It's not like that.
focus on the fundamentals.
Support.
Yes,
We're getting along.
yes on technology, yes on the AI, energy, and tourism.
We will agree on political issues,
Example of a subject
economic,
that is
Cooperation.
and economically.
an example of a peaceful region that is dynamically developing in the field of economy.
Mr. Jen, I have a question for you. According to the results of last year, the trade turnover of Chinese Asian exceeded $911.5 billion. This was reported by the main customs administration of the country. How do you generally see and assess the economic prospects of China's economic growth today? Not funny. The policy of economic openness has been carried out for 40 years, and more than 20 years have passed since China's accession to the TOE. How to come to Putin and Prime Minister Amba expressed a very strange opinion. For all the same, the Chinese economy. And even though we have the second economy in the world, our population is slightly higher than $12,000 a year. But the contribution of China, just the world economy, has been 300% for many years. China has already become the main trading partner for more than 140 countries and territories. Having gone over and expressed a very valuable position, I think that the elimination of poverty is a matter of course. The development of the world economy, because China's population is almost 18% of the world's population. Therefore, the elimination of instability in our country is a contribution to the development of global cooperation. And exchanges of our country with other partners of the world is always carried out on the basis of mutual benefit. And there is a very atmosphere that can be called our cooperation very successful. At the same time, he expressed a good opinion that it is necessary to adhere to mutually beneficial cooperation. You know everything. The plenum of the 20th convocation was successfully completed, and it was decided to consolidate the reform. This is a clear signal that and the expansion of openness is expanding. I'm in my room now. Regulating relations between and reforms. You think that development, global development and development brings huge opportunities to the whole world. We are gradually approaching the end of our plenary session, Mr. President, but in fact, we talked for 3 hours about what the Far East will be like in 6 years. What will be a marker for you that everything was successful? That's the main thing. Population growth. We need to. We need to create the conditions that we have talked about so much today so that the birth rate increases and people, especially young people, have a desire to come here to this region. A wonderful, brilliant region with such good prospects and connect your life with it.
Thank you.
And the last question that I want to address now to all participants in our discussion today. It sounds like this. What are the main challenges facing our countries today? Name them, please, and what are the potential answers to these challenges? Mr. Dogim, let's start with you.
Normally you start with the senior guy.
We usually start with the senior representative and the one who leads our meeting. In general, I would give the floor to Vladimir Vladimirovich.
Thank you. The question is about the future, right? Of course. But as for Russia, we must ensure the development of the economy on our own technological solutions with highly qualified, trained and motivated personnel.
Технологических решениях с высококвалифицированными, подготовленными и мотивированными кадрами.
This is the first one. And as for all of us together, I mean the countries of the global south in the broad sense of the word, this, of course. We must ensure world leadership in the economy.
Это, конечно, мы должны обеспечить мировое лидерство в экономике.
And bearing in mind the pace of development of the world economy and the pace of development of our countries, this task will certainly be fulfilled.
Наших стран эта задача, безусловно, будет исполнена.
Thank you.
Same question.
The issue is, of course, the economy.
Of course, to the development of the economy.
Unbridled capitalism.
But the fact is that the economy is no longer developing according to the scenario of capitalism of the past.
Which means
To develop the economy more humanely, within the framework of humane capitalism, the growth of trade, of course.
more compassionate, more care.
More compassionate, more sympathetic, more attentive to well-being and well-being.
President Putin mentioned. I think these are issues have been largely
It was indicated.
Master,
experienced in some countries in the West.
we must take into account the achievements that have been achieved by Western countries.
Low quality education is not our
But at the expense of what? Due to the poverty of the population. We must strive to the Russian economy, which will be progressive, unstable, which will take into account
housing, quality education, and also
environmental protection systems occur.
the pace of change in a post-normal
Fast
time,
and keep up with the changing time changes.
a new direction in terms of training of our young.
Which will keep up with the development of our youth, take into account
With values, which is in deficit in the world today.
The values that are now.
Believe that you want to progress as a country, as a nation,
I believe that progress must go humane.
values and ethics. It is a deficit in this world. That is why you see so many calamities, gross injustice,
Because of the lack of it,
racism.
we meet with racism, we meet with distortions, we meet with fanatics, including religious fanatics, and such serious problems. Because we have dehumanized ourselves, so to speak.
Referring to a lot of great literary works.
I have read many Russian writers. I have not quoted them precisely because they have always emphasized moral, ethical, and humane values, and their priorities.
With that, I think we should learn.
Actually, we have to learn this.
And we should not learn the excesses of the past.
We must learn from mistakes, especially when it comes to injustice in our future modernization of society.
Marginalize.
Thank you.
Mr. Jen, you have the same question. What are the main challenges facing our countries today? I would like to say, the chairman of the STIMP said that building a community of a common destiny of humanity is the most important task, and challenges for all of us because all cultures, different religions, different peoples in different regions. And all these peoples are at different stages of development. Everyone has different needs.
И все эти народы находятся на разных стадиях развития, и у всех разные запросы.
And building such a community is our community.
Общий большой вызов.
Thank you.
As I understand it, we are finishing, and I would like to thank our guests for their bright, informative speeches, and for their participation in our work, for their attention to what is happening in Russia, and in the Russian Far East.
происходит в России и в российском Дальнем Востоке.
Thank you very much.
And I want to address the audience. First of all, here are people who work in the economy or government officials who are currently engaged in discussing these issues. I must say that I am deeply convinced that entrepreneurial activity is, first of all, creation.
Предпринимательская деятельность – это прежде всего созидание.
And if we treat it like this, as a creative process, then we will certainly achieve all the goals that we set for ourselves, and achieve the solution of the tasks that we face.
Добьемся решения тех задач, которые перед нами стоят.
I want to thank you for your participation in this work and wish all of us success in implementing our plans. Thank you. Well, for my part, as a moderator, I want to quote you again, Vladimir Vladimirovich. I am glad that summing up the results of the session, we can say at the same time that the whole 21st century is a priority for the Far East. Thank you, and many thanks, our presenters. Thank you very much for your advice.